Good evening, Oriole Nation, and welcome to board meeting on 5/20/25.
All right.
Brad, there's a rock in a fireplace. You got it. All right, I think we're all ready.
Yeah. Awesome. All right, our next item is board mission statement and agreements.
Yeah, our board mission statement is we will develop policy that is representative of our community, set goals, and lead our district by collaborating. And our beliefs are stand up and own it. We are one, encourage to grow. Stand up and own it is that individual, like I'm going to take on myself and do the best I possibly can. And I'm going to own what I do for the best of the version of myself and others. And then we are one is really about doing it together. We need each other as a group to make things happen. And then finally, courage to grow. Every day we are learning. We got to be curious about what we do, and we get to do that every single time we meet.
All right, awesome, thank you. Our next item is approval of consent agenda. We have 3 items listed for our consent agenda this month. One is approval of special meeting minutes from May 12th, 2025. Number 2 is approval of regular meeting minutes from April 28th, 2025. And the third item is the treasurer's report, all of which are in our board packet. So I'll just look for a motion to approve consent agenda.
So moved.
Second.
And then roll call.
Nappy, yes. Hawk.
Yes.
Eckerman.
Yes.
Hefner.
Yes.
Billings.
Yes. Awesome. Next item is board members share a moment of pride. So it's an opportunity for us to share anything we got to experience over the last month that we want to share with the group. So I don't know if anyone would like to go first.
Sure, I'll start. Had a chance to attend the senior award night, senior ceremony, I guess, a couple weeks ago. Steve, I know you were there, and really encouraged by, so many talented seniors that received awards and recognition throughout the evening, and of course the support that they had from the scholarships and all of the awards that they were recognized for and won. So it was a neat opportunity to see that, and nice for the community and nice for those students.
Nice.
I went to the middle school concert last Thursday or Friday, I guess it ended up being. And it was good as always, but it was a little bittersweet with being Miss Sargent's last concert with us. And from everything I've been told, she handled this whole situation very professionally. And from the reaction of the kids during the concert and after the concert to her, you could tell she really made an impact on those kids. So difficult situation, which she handled with grace. And sorry to see her have to leave.
Well, maybe in a busy month, I'll go quick, but first of all, Choral Cabaret, I attended that with my wife, and as always, that was excellent. I tend to mention it most years, and some years I mentioned that when I was in high school, which I'm not going to say when that was, except I have my 52nd community reunion on Saturday. So, but back then it was a high school about 3 times bigger than ours. That there was one girl and one guy who stood up and would do a solo in front of the people, and we had just an outstanding number again this year. We got great voices and entertainers, so that's always special. As Jacob mentioned, the senior awards night. As part of my role on the scholarship committee, I was able to present the 2 school board or superintendent scholarships, the Kellogg and Borneman, who were former superintendents here in the district. And Again, this year, two outstanding winners. Our friend from the student council member here, Luis Garcia, won the Borneman, and Sophia Edelmeyer won the Kellogg. And then I also came here to Friendship and was able to do the multilingual, the acronyms change so often I can't keep up, but the night there, and that was awesome too. And all the community groups that were here to support our families, and our students had tables with presentations. That was a lot of fun. And the kids had a lot of fun too. They had activities for them. And then finally, last Thursday, I attended the final incubator EDU pitch contest at the Stair Center at Marion. Mr. Wismer does an awesome job with that program, and the kids were great. Again, the confidence that they showed, that they obviously had spent a lot of time on their product and their proposals, and that's always fun to see too. So that was my main.
I also attended the multilingual night at FLC, and I heard a lot of comments from parents and families that were there that loved the resource tables out in the atrium area. Lots of work went into that. My kids had a lot of fun, so that was awesome. I also attended Girls on the Run. So we had a group from BAMS and a group from FLC there, and just kudos to those girls. That's a lot of hard work, especially for some of them, and I think they put the time and effort in, and then I got to celebrate on that day. And then just a testament to our staff too, who, that's extra time out of their day to come do the practices for how many weeks and then go to the run on the Saturday. So that was awesome. And then I also attended the gallery night at Treffort. I saw Steve and Gail there. Really, really cool experience. I loved the glow in the dark hallway. Just a really neat way for the kids to showcase all their artwork and things. So it was good.
Awesome. The only other thing that I had that was different was Project Grill. So I had an opportunity to go out to Festival Foods a couple Fridays ago. While we won runner-up there, the surprise came after in the weekend when they won the community award. So I don't know if you've seen it, it's outside the high school. I think it was as of this morning still. Awesome grill. Yeah, I mean.
Were there posters on it though?
Yeah. It was amazing. Not only, I think the cool part was not only the grill and it was functional, it had a table that was attached to it. It's on a trailer, but the crew brought a ton of chairs that were stored in the grill too behind it. So multi-purpose, and here they sold it, which funds into the program, which is cool. And just thank you to the group. Thanks to Josh, the teacher, and then also I think Merck Marine was our corporate sponsor this year for that one. So thank you to them. So. All right. Thanks everyone for sharing. Next is our Horseman High School Student Council. So floor is all yours.
Good evening, board members. My name is Leia Wanda, and I currently serve as the Student Council President at Harassment High School. It's an honor to be here tonight and to share updates and highlights from our student body and school community. For our Student Council, we recently have our Kiss a Senior Goodbye event, where seniors will receive farewell messages and a chocolate kiss during graduation practice, a small way to honor their next chapter. We're also preparing for Oktoberfest and Homecoming next year. The Homecoming theme for next year will be Golden Hour. Our final Student Council meeting will be next Wednesday. For Key Club, at the Senior Awards program, 19 outstanding seniors were recognized for their years of service and dedication. Their impact is reflected in the total hours contributed. So 1-year members gave 77 hours of service, 2-year members contributed 179.5 hours, 3-year members served 1,034 hours, 4-year members give 473.75 hours. Together, these 19 seniors contributed 1,764 hours of service to the school and community during their time at Harassment. The newly elected Key Club officers for the 2025-2026 school year are President Kimberly Diaz, Vice President Briat Pollack, Secretary Aranza Morales, Treasurer Yaya Liz Denal Santos. This team is expected to continue building on the club's strong foundation of service. On April 30th, Key Club hosted its annual breakfast for the sponsoring Fond du Lac Club, welcoming 21 adult leaders in appreciation of their continued support. During the event, 5 seniors members were honored with scholarships provided by the sponsoring club. Sophia Eidelmeyer, $1,000, Ella Arndt, $1,000, Kelsey Forsyth, $1,000, Luis Garcia, $1,500, Madeline Langloff, $1,000. Key Club expresses its sincere gratitude for this recognition and the club's continued investment in student success. At the final meeting of the year, Mrs. Hintz and Mrs. Coe were honored as the announcer retirement after more than 20 years of combined service as Key Club advisors. Their guidance and dedication have shaped a generation of student leaders. Moving forward, Michael Westbrook, a Horace Mann High School alumnus, will take on the role of advisor. His leadership is expected to carry forward the club's mission of service and empowerment. And I'd like to introduce to you guys SCRE, the Student Coalition for Racial Equality. SCRE is a student-led group focused on promoting inclusivity, cultural awareness, and equity in our school and community. We make sure every student feels seen, respected, and valued. We host cultural celebrations and fundraisers during Heritage Months using posters, videos, and food events to highlight diversity. These efforts help raise money for scholarships with plans to expand support for students and financial aid. We also run a mentorship program where high schoolers support younger students, especially those learning English, to help them feel included and confident. Additionally, we assist with Spanish translation during conference so all families can stay involved in their child's education. SRE gives students a voice, builds leadership, and helps create a school environment where everyone belongs. And lastly, student accomplishments. We have Morgan Fowler earned first place in the 800-meter event at the conference track and meet, an outstanding athletic achievement. Project Grill was awarded Best of Show Runner-Up, showcasing the team's hard work and innovation. And several members of the incubator program received funding for their product ideas. Finally, Nova Lupnow, Adler Mayer, and Reese Steele were selected for the prestigious State Honors Choir and the State Honors Music Project, representing excellence in vocal performance and musical talent. And that's it. Any questions?
Wow, that's
Yeah.
warm up, huh? Very cool. Any questions from the board?
Thank you and welcome.
Yeah.
We're excited for next year as well, so.
Yeah, absolutely. Great job.
All right, thank you.
Next item is our clerk's report.
Donations this month were Wayne and Janice Shingen, $50 for Backpack Buddies. Betty Baumhart, $1,000 for Oriole Community Scholarship. Chartwell's $500 for scholarship donation. Gary Schumacher, $200 for FLC popcorn donation. North Fond du Lac Optimist Club, $200 for the Oriole Athletic Hall of Fame. And Jim and Carol Vetta Scholarship for $3,000. So thanks to all of those donations.
Nice. Yes, thank you. Thanks for sharing, Rick. Our next item is citizens' comment. Gives an opportunity for anyone in the district that lives in the district that's willing to share a comment. So just ask you to state your name and address before starting.
I have a clarification question first. If I want to make a comment, but then also my daughter wants to make a comment, is that under the same comment or are those separate?
I think it can be a separate comment.
A separate?
Yep.
Okay. Shannon.
Name and address.
Name and
Yeah,
address. yeah.
Shannon Zupke, 320 McKinley Street. I just wanted to say that I've come and I've had a good conversation with Dr. Mino before. Prior to referendum conversations, I was part of the families who worked to get it to pass, and unfortunately, we all know that did not go our way. I'm aware that we've had to make some really hard, horrible decisions, and I just wanted to share that I still have some concerns about the middle school and the lack of curriculum. Auden is a 6th grader there. She's an incredible scholar. She works incredibly hard, puts a lot of pressure on herself, and I do not feel that she would be succeeding where she is if it wasn't for her drive and how hard she works. So as I think of my next scholar that's coming up. He's got a while, so I'm hoping that we can get going. But from my understanding, there is not a lot of mandated curriculum in the middle school, and the lack of dollars really concerns me. And I know that our hands are tied, so it really, really worries me. So I just want, I don't know, I know there's no magic wand. I know that we don't have a crystal ball. I don't know what we do. I'm gonna be as bold to say that in my district, not so far away, I don't wanna go this far. I think we've gone way too far. I'm not allowed to show movies in my classroom at all. The amount of movies she has watched in the middle school is a lot. A lot. And I would ask each and every one of you, what do you learn when you're watching a movie when it takes multiple days? I think taking them all away is too much. I think you can learn. I think there's comprehension questions. I think there's a way you can use them. But when she comes home and tells me bi-weekly, that she's watched this movie in this class, and we watched this movie in science, and we watched this movie in social studies, and oh, I created this 85-point PowerPoint in social studies that has nothing to do with this, and I'm really concerned. She's a wonderful scholar, but what is happening to our lowest scholars? So I am just asking that we really truly take the curriculum in the middle school seriously, because I'm concerned with the lack of budget. And I know that we have new admin in there, and I'm hopeful that we can continue to keep driving it, but I'm going to be the squeaky wheel that's going to continue to remind you that we have students who deserve better. I've honestly thought to myself, Fond du Lac looks like a better choice right now, and I'm kicking myself in the butt for not open enrolling. Because they deserve better, and they deserve a curriculum that's going to be rigorous and going to push her. And my boys as they come up, and every other scholar who deserves it. So I just wanted to say that I'm worried. And I know you have a hard decision. Also, I just want to tally on about Miss Sargent. I know hard decisions had to be made. Auden's going to say something extremely big here in a minute. She's panicking. The one and only staff member in the middle school that was a safe person for her was Miss Sargent. And it is not just her. I could cry talking about it. She was a safe person for not just middle school students. She was a safe person for a lot of high school students, for your LGBTQ students, for students who did not have any other people in their building. I think every one of you need to wonder why she is one of the only adults in those buildings that she was the only safe person for. The relationship building has me concerned. There's a lot of middle school staff that these kids are not comfortable going to. She has some really brave things to share with you, and her only safe person is gone next year. And what she's sharing, that is going to shock you, she did talk to Miss Sargent about it, and she is aware of. So I understand hard decisions were made. Miss Sargent is amazing, but that is a safe person that's walking out the door. So who's going to fill that spot next year?
You can stand or you can sit, whatever. Comfortable. Just if you could say your name and address.
Auden Zepke, 320 McKinley Street. I am Auden. I am a beluga whale. I am a fat bitch. I am a fat whore. Did that shock you? I hear these comments every day while I'm trying to learn. While I'm at my locker, while I'm eating lunch, while I'm just being me inside the walls of Bessie Allen Middle School. And I am not the only one. This year, I was shoved to the ground because I finally responded to a bully. My response, womp womp. Adult response, if you wouldn't have said that, he wouldn't have shoved you. You know what I heard? Your skirt was short. You were asking for it. Adults continue to make me feel like it's my fault because I don't report. My answer hasn't changed. I don't feel comfortable. Nothing changes, and I am not okay with the backlash from students. It's not just me, but I'm coming today to make sure every one of you know we need to make a plan, because I am not a beluga whale. I am not a fat bitch. I am not a fat whore. This isn't me at all. I'm a funny straight A student. I'm Gingy from Shrek the Musical. I'm a first baseman and outfielder on 3 softball teams. I'm on a robotics team. I play volleyball. I'm a Girls on the Run participant. Bartholomew, my baritone, is the coolest accessory I own, besides all my lip gloss. I'm a big sister to 2 brothers, and I make my parents incredibly proud every day. Just like we are taught at Bessie Allen to follow the Oriole way. This is me standing up to own it. Now, what are you going to do to follow the Oriole way and stand up and own it? What are you going to do to make sure students don't have to learn in this environment?
Thank you both for your comments. I'll turn to see if there are any additional citizens' comments. Okay. Thank you again. Our next item on the board or on the agenda is superintendent's report. So Dr. Mino, whenever you're ready.
Yeah, we're gonna jump around here quite a bit, so just bear with the back and forth on the agenda. I'm just gonna start out with this. Usually we play under each of our buckets and our core areas in terms of our strategic plan. That's the social, emotional, healthy schools, learning academics, engagement and communication. And then the final is the financial operations. So we try to put all of our components under each one of those so you get an update in those areas. Where we're gonna start today is actually honoring our valedictorians and salutatorians. And we have, I believe, one valedictorian with us today. Ella Humpner is with us and will be graduating tomorrow night as valedictorian for the class of 25. I just wanna honor you and say congratulations. This is a major feat, and I'm sure there's been so much work along the way, including you've had, supportive family to get you through that too, and heading off to UW-Madison, is that correct? Yep. Okay. Do you want to just share a little bit about yourself and maybe something you're saying in the speech tomorrow night that you're not?
For you. Well, I'm going to Madison next year for kinesiology, and then after that, get my doctorate in physical therapy or occupational therapy. I don't know yet, something like that. I have a rabbit named Wilbur. I don't know, that's what I default to when people say to talk about myself.
Why physical therapy? What was something that surged you towards that?
My mom, she's severed 2 tendons and 2 nerves cutting an avocado. And so she had to go to physical therapy and I went with her and just enjoyed helping her with that. So yeah.
Wonderful. I don't know if anybody else has any questions from the board.
No questions.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
Yeah,
Thank you.
congratulations. Absolutely.
Excited to hear the speech.
We also have another valedictorian, Valeria Reveles. She is not here tonight, I believe, right? But she will be speaking tomorrow night at graduation. And then we have a salutatorian who is, I believe, playing soccer at the moment, or Sophia Adelmeyer will also be speaking tomorrow night. So we have 3 speakers that will be sharing a little bit of their story with the rest of the class of 25. So tomorrow night, shameless plug, 6:30, graduation.
And
Okay.
Luis Garcia will be speaking as well.
Okay, so Luis Garcia is on the docket too. So we've got a great show for everybody tomorrow night. Please join us at Horace Mann High School and the gymnasium. Okay, flip-flopping here. Let's see, I'm just working through this. Thank you. You do not have to stay the whole time. You're free to leave whenever you want. Anybody who's speaking to you has that same opportunity as well. I'm gonna move into, I know you have to roll. So we're gonna dip into a little bit of the activities director as well as the principal review from BAMS, from Miss Esquivel, and she's gonna share a little bit with us because she's gotta get back outside for soccer.
Yeah.
Correct? And it's such a beautiful night, right? That we have that going.
Wet night. So if you recall, at the beginning of this year, we had established a goal for getting at least 85% of our students engaged in at least one or more club activity or athletic team. And our baseline was based off of our spring survey last year. One of the things we talked about going into this year is we wanted to make sure that the information and the data we were gathering was valid, because we weren't confident that students were reporting everything or accurately on what they were engaged in, especially at the middle school level. And we know we weren't getting 100% participation when we were sending out those surveys. So this year we tackled, with the help of our administrative assistants, is tagging every student in Skyward what activities they were in, whether it was an athletic team, forensic, robotics, SCRE, all those groups, they were tagged in Skyward. So when we pulled the data at the end of this year, I can confidently say that is the most accurate data we probably have ever had for how many students are engaged in activities. So while we might not have reached that 85% goal or even the growth goal we established, we know where we stand right now moving forward, which is going to be great. It's something for the next 80 to take a springboard off of. So currently right now, it is showing 59% of Horace Mann students are engaged in at least one activity, club or athletic team, and 52% of Bessie Allen Middle School students. We did not do any survey at the elementary level because we really rely on parents reporting. We had talked about, is there a way that we can connect with all these outside organizations, whether it's dance studios, Girl Scouts, Boy Scouts, can we accurately do that? It's possible, but now that we don't have that K-12 activities role, I'm not sure who's gonna take that piece on. So that'll be something for the district to consider moving forward, how we wanna support the activity realm at the elementary level. I think in terms of action steps moving forward, just continuing to streamline that process and make it easy for students to propose ideas for activities and clubs in school. Right now, it's been pretty smooth with students just coming to myself or Dwayne at the high school and say, hey, I have this idea. This is why I want to do it. Here's an advisor that I think could lead it. This is what we're going to need, and we can kind of move through it. As long as we have an adult that can supervise the students, we usually can make everything work. So, and the ideas still keep coming forward. So I'm optimistic that we'll continue to grow. And I know esports is something we've talked a lot about, and that to me should be like our number one group to try to get off and running in the next year or so, because I'm hearing a lot of rumble about that from students. So that really should be something we should focus on. Any questions on the activity lens? All right, we can jump over to Bessie Allen and talk about learning and academics this year. So at the beginning of the year, Mr. Gonzalez, with the assistance of Jen Towell, our reading specialist for 612, they focused on the Dibbles assessment to identify where students were at with their reading comprehension. Fast forward to January, when Adam Broden was facilitating their professional development, the goal was changed, and they were now focusing on Ames Web data. So when we look at our end of year data, you're going to see that the new goal that was developed in May was 80% of the students would be proficient on the Ames Web. As you see on the data there was a significant decline from fall to spring testing. You know, Jen Towell and I had conversation around the data, trying to figure out what could have caused such a decline based on what we were doing with our staff and the laser-like focus that we were doing around vocabulary development and doing different strategies in the classroom. We saw it actively happening. Jen Towell was in classrooms coaching teachers that never reached out to them before around in math class, doing vocabulary and literacy-based activities in class. And so one of the things that Jen and I talked about is that she was still doing Dibbles assessments at the end of the year. That data, if we were reporting on that, definitely showed an improvement from the beginning of the year to the end of the year. So one of the things we have to do next year, obviously with this data, the Ames Web data, that's a piece of information, right? It's a snapshot in the student. And I don't think anyone's going to say that's good data. That literacy has to be our focus at the middle school, 100% moving forward. What I'm optimistic about is that Jen and I will hit the ground running. We've been talking about plans. What are we going to do for interventions? We know we have students coming up from elementary with intervention plans. How are we going to continue that momentum so those students don't slip back at all? And then how do we build the capacity of our staff members to make sure that everyone is a literacy teacher? It's not just an ELA teacher's job to make sure that our students are literate. That's everyone that works with students every single day. So I am optimistic that we will have a new assessment tool in place that we'll start with in the fall and we'll actually continue the entire year with, so that we can actually look at data and have a clearer picture of where our students are at and what progress they're making. And with the iReady that we're moving towards, having used that in a previous district, that is gonna be a huge tool for teachers to actually go in and focus on areas where we know students are identified that they need some extra support in. So I'm really excited about where we're going. Clearly not happy with the data. So if you look at my action steps, they're all action steps for next year.
The fall, and the scoring here, the fall
Mhm.
and the spring, those are both Ames Web's numbers, right?
Yes, yes. So they did take Ames Web at the fall, mid, and end of the year. But at the beginning of the year, when they first established their reading goal, it was around the Dibbles assessment. They still took the Ames Web, yes, but this data is around the Ames Web data,
I mean, it's very concerning.
100%. I can tell you that if you look at, based on conversations I had with Jen, nationwide data, we're not unique. This is a nationwide trend that they're seeing. Why? We don't know. This is a new thing that everyone was,
It's a nationwide trend that as you go through the year, you get worse.
there's a nationwide trend that students that scored in the spring were doing worse than they were in the fall, yes. Not necessarily, I would have to look at the percentages by how much, but it is a nationwide discussion around that specific tool.
It doesn't seem to be happening with the other schools in the district.
Yeah, I mean, again, this is the continued work and picking up where Julian was at in this beginning of the semester, like trying to figure out, like, I think, again, working with Jen and Jillian and the rest of the team and really trying to coordinate, but there was a lot of moving parts this year, Rick, in terms of that, and we'll own that as the current
I know,
state.
and I'm not trying to lay this on you, I know you're going to go to the spot, but the teachers have been there consistently. I mean, this isn't, unfortunately, a new trend that bans, right? I mean, and I look back in previous years, it was always posted, the honor rolls for the middle school. This year it wasn't posted, so I know last year, the 8th grade, which, 71 out of whatever it was, 100 kids were on the high honor roll. I guess I would like to know how many of these, by grade, these kids are in the high honor roll, because if, my concern is we're sending a message to the kids and to the parents saying, your kid's on the high honor roll. So the parents are assuming they're doing well. And you look at these test results and they're abysmal and they got worse. That's what bothers me, is they're worse in the spring than the fall. And I understand there were some administration issues, and I understand Jillian's there to fix a lot of this stuff. But my question is, what are the teachers doing here that this went down so much? I mean, it just doesn't make sense to me. So, and then I hear comments like we heard in the citizens things, and those are not new comments. I mean, you and I have had this conversation for a few years now. So I guess, we'll go through your list of what you're planning on doing, but I think we as a board need to really pay close attention to this, not just once or twice or 3 times a year. I think this has to be an ongoing topic with us, what's going on and what we're going to do to improve things.
So a couple different things on that topic. I mean, I think a big part of it is getting the right tool to assess this as well and to continue with iReady, which we are moving to, which we didn't have a consistent measure at that level. It provides teachers with the information that it shows them specifically where and what the students have not hit and what to address specifically and how actually to do that too as well. And students can actually access that and then work on that and progress in terms of that skill building. That's both in literacy and math.
So we're moving away from Ames Web now?
We're moving away from Ames Web and we're going completely to iReady. And the other thing too that, we definitely have to look at as we're sharing out information to y'all too. I've talked to, and this is something we got to bring up, is how do we do it like monthly where you can get a snapshot of FLC. The next month you get BAMS, a full scale information piece. So I think that's an important part of this process too. I also feel that the work we're doing with CISA 6 in terms of like trajectory and the timeline of what we need to do to move these scores forward, now that, things have changed quite significantly in terms of how we get this done, in terms of our, professional development, our planning, our CT time, and what that looks like now with some changes that have happened in the district. I see us moving in a different direction pretty quickly, especially with some of those pieces in place. So there are things coming, and we have to obviously own some of these components, but at the same time, as you know, there's a lot of room to grow, but I have no doubt that we're going to make these shifts and moves in the next few years working on this. I don't know, Jillian, you got anything more on?
I think I'll just make a comment on like the honor roll and stuff like that. I can tell you in my observations in this semester, our grading practices need a complete overhaul. And what we're actually grading, we're not grading for learning, we're grading for effort and all these other things. It's not an accurate picture of what students are able to demonstrate in terms of their knowledge and skills.
I've been trying to make that point for a long time, and it just continues to happen. So hopefully with your guidance here, we'll see a change in that, because having 71 eighth graders on the high honor roll is, when you get these kind of test scores, we're not encouraging parents to get involved and step in and step up, because they're saying my kid's on the high honor roll. And then they get their state forward test back and their scores are horrible. They get these results, their scores are horrible. So
yeah, the grades have to be looked at. They're not meaningful, accurate, and consistent right now. And that's where we got to get to. And people don't know what they don't know, and we've got to support and train that up with our staff members. And so that's what we're going to do. And I'm fully confident that Jillian's going to turn that ship and help with the support of everybody else in that, making that happen. I think that's, also just looking at the whole district too. Making sure that our grades really reflect our learning and aren't just marks because you raised your hand 15 times today in class.
In terms of action steps for next year, creating a literacy team that would consist of myself, our reading specialists in the district, teachers, that is focused on looking at the data regularly. iReady is going to be a great tool that we're going to be able to get more regular dipsticks as to where students are at with their specific skills. That way we can plan strategically around what we need to do. And my role is part of number 3, when we get down to targeted professional development. What are we doing in our CT time that's actually building the toolbox of our staff members so that they have the skills and knowledge necessary to actually give students what they need? Right now, it's happening in pockets. There's some teachers that really have dove in to intervention work and are excelling and have done wonderful work with Gentel. We just need to replicate that across the board, across all grade levels. Number 2, prioritize reading comprehension as part of our CSIP next year. Clearly, this has got to be our main focus next year. Number 4, ensure time for literacy instruction is happening across all content areas. It has to be a mission of ours that literacy is being a major component in all classes all day long, so that students see that I need to read, write, and communicate in all my classes. It's not just an English class. I have to do it in math. It looks different in each of those content areas, but they need to see how those skills cross over. And it's helping students get into the curriculum in a different facet. Like, I'm going to explain in writing why I solved the math problem that I did, type of situation. Number 5, use data to drive instruction. Historically, I don't believe at BAMS they were ever using data in a meaningful way. They tested, they looked at it, and they moved on, and they continue to spiral and do the same things they've always been doing, which is why we keep getting the same results, and over time, eventually those results continue to decline. And so it is making sure that we are having a data protocol in every CT meeting that's driving the planning that we're doing each and every week. And then I think another key component is we can't lose sight of the partnerships that we can have with families around what are some things that they can be doing at home to support in the literacy realm. Some easy free resources or guidance on, it's okay even in middle school to read aloud a book at night with your child. So that's a good thing to be doing at home that's going to help improve their literacy. And so it's just compiling those resources and finding ways to get those out to families, I think is gonna be key. Any questions around learning and academics? We can jump into safe and emotional.
From your comment before about, like sharing out monthly, the result's important, don't get me wrong, like seeing the result, but like, we talk about like development that, the educators are doing. Like, I know that's happening, right? There's intentional time for that. We've set ourselves up, we're fully supportive as a board. It's like the sustainability, like what's the outcomes of it? That's what I'd like to see more, like, not just, while getting a committee together is great, but like, what are the outcomes of that committee? And, as we go through next year, like, what are some of those milestones that we're trying to accomplish? I think that's the hard part that I see. And then when I see the results, I think similar to what Rick is saying is like, okay, is it the wrong play? You know what I mean? Like, is it not productive time or not being used right? So I just holistic and nothing about BAMs, but just holistically, I think that would be helpful, at least from my perspective.
All right, safe and emotionally healthy schools, we'll look at that bucket. So the panorama survey was given in the fall and the spring, and you can see the different bullet points of questions that students answered. The green is our score from the fall of 23, and then that purplish is from the spring of 24, and then that bluish is 90, is from the fall of 24, and then the orange is spring of 25, so most recent. I think some highlights from this data, especially school belonging. Do you have a friend from school who you can count on to help you? I mean, we're still over 90%, so kids are at least feeling like they're connected with some people within the school and that they can count on those. I do think under student mindset, when things go wrong for you, how calm are you able to remain? That's significantly dropped. And so we really need to focus on within our SEL lessons, how are we building their skills in order to know how to respond in those situations when things aren't going right, because that's going to happen every day. Things aren't always going to go perfect. So that is definitely an area for improvement. There was a significant decline in school safety, down to 72% this spring. I would love to know a little bit more about why students are feeling less safe. I have some speculation, especially if I look at just in the last month at BAMS, just some fights that occurred, the issue with vapes and stuff in school. Those are all playing into the students' mindset. And so those are some things that we've been working really hard, Carrie and I, in this last few weeks to really try to get a handle on and make sure that we are following through with every report that we get to make sure that students understand that we're holding others accountable for things that are not appropriate for school. I think the other highlight for us, even though it was a dip, under school climate, how often do your teachers seem to be excited about teaching in your class? We're at 85%. I always aim for 100%, but students are still recognizing that teachers are enjoying what they're doing and excited to share that learning with students. I think a big thing, and we heard it in Autumn's comment, if you look at the next page, under supportive relationships, do you have a teacher like a trusted adult at school? To me, 80% isn't good. What are we doing to identify those students that don't have those trusted adults, and how are we connecting them and building those relationships with students? There really, again, has to be something around our SEL lessons that we're doing. We are going to explore some different tools because maybe what we've been doing with SEL lessons haven't been giving us the results that we want. So we need to explore some different avenues of how can we get some different ways to connect with students on these various topics. Questions? And then do you want Carrie to talk about behavior and attendance right away?
Could you do that, and then that's okay with you, Carrie?
Yeah,
Good?
that's fine.
Okay.
Sure. If you scroll,
Yep, it's 78, I think. Right here?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So When we look at our behavior trends, we saw that BAM's major behavior referrals increased throughout the year. We had an 18% increase of major behavior referrals from the 23-24 school year to this year. Notably though, overall, the number of behavior incidents, the number of actual behavior incidents decreased. So we're seeing just I think just the shift in, things that have been going on. We're just seeing a lot of different things like Jillian mentioned already, fights and some vaping, some significant vaping things going on. And so moving forward next year, we're looking at different strategies about how we can be a little bit more present in some of these areas, monitoring these behaviors so that we can be a little bit more proactive versus reactive to those things. Our minor behaviors also increased. Something to note is that we actually had consistent supervision in the cafeteria this school year. And I think with the consistent monitoring in the cafeteria, that brought along consistency with behavior referrals, because we saw the most increase in both majors and minors were in the cafeteria. And so I think students are just being held a little bit more accountable in those spaces, and the expectations are being enforced. So some of the things that we'll look at moving forward for the next school year is, are our rules and expectations, delivering the results that we want and motivating students to make better choices. And if not, what can we be doing to address those areas? And then if you talking about attendance, so the next is attendance. Although we saw an increase in chronic absenteeism by 2%, we still have 96% of our students who are meeting our district regular attendance policy. And so that means that they're not tardy, they don't have unexcused absences. So overall, we still have a great attendance rate at BAMS. We do follow the board policy with, habitual truancy and sending certified letters and things like that, and meeting with families to develop attendance plans to help maybe reduce those barriers as to what's getting in the way of students being at school.
Any questions for Carrie at this point? All right. Now get it back out.
Yep.
Stay dry, please. Yeah. Thank you for being here. Appreciate it.
I'm gonna jump around a little bit, as I was saying before. Jill, do you want to just talk about briefly your trip, and then we'll get into the new personnel that's coming in, and then we'll come back to the principal data review. So I'm gonna swing to your stuff, and if you want to just talk about it, that'd be fantastic.
Okay. I'm just seeking support to organize an educational trip in the summer of 2027 for our families at the school district of North Fond du Lac. The proposal is through an organization called EF Tours. The why behind it is, I feel like it's a great opportunity to increase our students' cultural awareness, offering them something that maybe their families wouldn't organize themselves or be confident in doing it. I have some personal background with it. I went with my daughter and her school on a trip in 2022, and then she went on a second trip in 2023, and I have seen how she navigates new things and how her confidence has grown around individuals that maybe she wouldn't have had a lot of experience with before. And so I think it's a great opportunity for our students. In each of the trips that are out there, there is definitely a fun component, but every day you're doing something educational. So on the trip that I went on, we toured caves, and we went to ruins, and we went to plantations, and we went to a cocoa factory, and they got to see what the cultural industry in that part of the world was, as well as then they got to learn from the locals of what their day-to-day activities look like and the history behind that. There's a piece in this document that has been sent to you. If you scroll, it kind of talks about how EF Tour takes on the liabilities and things like that that may be unfamiliar or as a district would be some hesitation. So they explain how they cover that or what they do for safety. When we go on a trip like this, there are obviously adults that go along with, as well as we have a tour guide the entire time that we were there. So like my first experience, our flight was canceled because of mechanical issues. So a trip, we were supposed to be there in 8 hours, it took us 40 hours. And through that whole time, they were alongside us navigating, as well as with the liability, they compensated us for any of our lost experiences there. So I felt very comfortable with this organization, have kind of navigated the hiccups that can happen with anybody that travels. I know for myself, we all had to sign, including the adults, that we would follow all school rules, and the program offers documentations and suggestions for that. So I feel like we have really good guidance. I do have here that's not included in there if you guys wanted. It's kind of like the summary of what the itinerary would look like. So I'm proposing that a trip to Costa Rica, and then it gives you on this page 3, you can see the cities that we would go to, and it's in small fonts, so I apologize to that. What each day would look like.
What year would this be again, Jill?
Summer of 2027. So my hope would be that by doing this early enough, some of the students can take time to plan, or the families could plan. It would allow us to brainstorm if the group that's going wants to do fundraisers, or if you would prefer to self-fund those different things that are out there. I know that there is, through the EF Tours, they have a site that they could give a link to their aunts and uncles and grandparents, like during the holidays, instead of doing gifts of whatever for Christmas, they can put money towards their trip to that. So they have a lot of things out there for us that to be 100% this time of the year, I haven't dove all the way into it. You know, getting through this last week of school, this will be on my summer to-do list, but it's just something that I wanted to bring to our community to see if there's interest out there.
Is there a requirement amount of students that would need to participate? I know previous trips that we've organized, there was like, for this pricing, it's this threshold.
I don't think so. I do know that it would probably change the pricing of the adults that from our district that go. So for every 6 students, we are allowed to bring another adult.
Okay.
But I can ask that question. My daughter's first trip that we went on, it was a very small group because it started her freshman year of 2020 and then was delayed 2 years. So all of those juniors and seniors who had graduated and were gonna go on the trip, who are now in college, weren't necessarily interested in that at that point. So I think there was a group of like 5 or 6 that went, and then I was an adult and then the teacher that organized it.
Yeah, the reason I ask is just like, I don't want the added disappointment if, you know, you sign up and you're excited for it as a kid and then, oh, we needed 15 people, only 7 did. I know that's happened in other, not here necessarily, but other programs that I've seen, and that kind of has a negative effect on what we're trying to grade, I think.
Jill, in the past, we haven't done a lot of trips like this before, and I think a lot of that is more in the distant past with the social economic level of our families, that it was difficult to pay for some of that stuff. I think that's changed, and you're not talking about a huge number of students, right? If you're talking single digits.
I would love to start small. think it might be wetted it a little bit. I mean, I feel like I have a pretty good background because I've participated in one, but
Okay,
I
well, that
will.
would eliminate, the thought of the people that can't afford to go, the kids that can't afford,
Yeah.
and seeing others go. I mean, but I guess the only small question I have is, we do, the band trip is what we've done here every 4 years, and with those smaller numbers, there really wouldn't be much competition there, would it, to
I don't
affect the
think so,
band?
because I think band is next, right? It's
Mhm.
next year,
26,
so it's gonna be
and
year
then-
25, 26. So this would be almost like right in the middle before.
Yeah, 2030 would be the next one after that, the
Mhm.
4-year thing, so.
Yeah.
So basically, this again, just front loading y'all, giving you a little information, start, having the conversation, Joe, and then what would happen then, I think you'd come back to us and say like, okay, this is the itinerary, this is what we're doing, so many people, these are the chaperones, and then the board would give the blessing in a new business in terms of the ability, because it's an overnight and several days outside of the country. I think it's important that we have you all be part of that vote, okay? Any other questions for Jill at this point?
Thanks for putting it together.
Yes.
Yeah, that's good.
Great, okay, moving right along. If we could have our new folks coming in, and then we're gonna flip back to the principals, but Matt, if you would come forward, Kara, Brad even, if you wanna have a seat right in front, and we're just gonna talk through some of our new faces in the room. Just hold on. And just talk a little bit and like get to know you all a little bit better as well before we move in here. Okay. Somewhere I'll get it. There we go. Good. So we have 3 different individuals with us tonight. Really excited as part of the district, and we got some amazing interview processes over the last couple of weeks. But we've got 3 individuals who are coming into our world, or still in our world, like moving forward with what we're doing. We had a position open at the high school for the AD and AP position, so activities director and associate principal. That became available because, as Jillian pointed out, the director position, K-12, was no longer, and so we needed to still have someone help out with the activities and things like that were going on 6-12. And so we're really fortunate, and the Horseman team, as well as the Best Young team, bringing on Matt Quadra from the Oshkosh area. And I'm just gonna give you a few moments to just share a little bit about yourself, and anybody here can fire away on any kind of questions moving forward, okay?
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for having me tonight. Matt Quadra, grew up in the Oshkosh area, so familiar with the area. Went away to college in Stevens Point. After a while, played football, wrestled there. My wife and I decided to move back to the Oshkosh area. We liked the area. Got back into education, and I made that change. And a couple years after that, kind of made the decision I wanted to go into the administration realm so I could have a broader impact on more students. In the meantime, while I was working on getting my administration degree, I was helping out with football, assistant coaching. I was assistant coach wrestling, and then took over the head wrestling coach for 4 years. The more I took over, the more I saw I could impact more students, and that kind of the initial switch that I really wanted to be, and just be that person to help them learn and grow and continue on.
Awesome. Hey, another wrestler in the, that's fantastic. Happy to have you.
What was it about North Fond du Lac that brought you here?
I really like the small community. Actually, I got to meet one of your teachers or guidance counselors at UWO. They went to Aspiring Teachers, brought a group of your students there, and I happened to be there, and I just got to listen to their stories. Little did they know that I might be interested in coming to the district. And I just got to know them more, and just how more tight and like niche they were and everything like that, and what they said about the school and everything. That really made it interesting. And again, I think the counselor said I get to know everyone in the school, and I get to actually see them and talk to them, know their names. And then the next day I went to Oshkosh West, and I put like 20, 30 kids I'd never seen before, because it's just such a large school. So having that smaller community to have a bigger impact, I believe.
Other questions for Matt?
I kind of ran this by Matt before, but with the new rule changes where coaches have so much more access to kids. I know your official day isn't until July 1st, but we've got some coaches struggling, trying to get things organized for the summer and wondering if you're open to helping them.
That, absolutely. One of the biggest things I want to jump in and make sure that's handled properly, because if we just cut those ties loose, it's not going to be great for our athletes. They're going to be drained. The purpose of it is to make sure they're getting better. And if we let everyone just have them, it's going to hurt more than anything. I actually got to work on a committee at my old school with coaches and talking about it and hearing what their ideas were. I can bring some ideas here based on what I heard of those coaches, hear what these coaches want, and make a good plan for everybody. And really what benefits the students the best.
Yeah, we have a lot of multiple sport athletes, and if we have football, basketball, and track all trying to jam them in on a summer day, it's gonna be chaotic.
And I'm sure, just like us, most of your students are working too, so they're trying to figure out that working aspect on top of all this and what something has to give, so there's gotta be some good guidelines for that.
And the weight room.
And the weight room, yes, and the weight room, absolutely.
Any other questions for Matt at this point in time? Thank you and welcome. We're excited for you to be part of our Final Act team, so
Very excited.
thanks for being here. Appreciate it. Next to Matt is Kara Harkoff. We created a position because we eliminated a position. We eliminated our math coach position at the elementary, and we put together a lit coordinator, and this position is really to assist primarily in the beginning a lot with our elementaries because of state statute Act 20. That's really about exactly what we were talking about before, is increasing those literacy achievement scores for our kids. And one of the things that's really important, obviously, is to get right into the work and be there with the teachers, as well as like learn from the kids and working with that. And this job provides that opportunity, but organizing it and helping out. This person also works significantly with Gentile. She's right over there, and Gentile has been amazing for our district and at the 612 level, helping out our teachers with bringing those strategies, as Jillian was pointing out later, to really foster that achievement and learning for our kids as well in that area. So we're really grateful and thankful. But this is, again, we're doubling down to make sure that we hit this stuff, because we realize that we haven't been there and we got to do something for our kids and for our community. With that being said, Kara, welcome. If you want to share a little bit about yourself and maybe excitement about coming in.
Definitely. So I'm sitting back there bursting at the seams, listening to Shannon, the mom, share her concerns with the curriculum, and listening to Jillian share the data from the middle school. And I'm just so ready to get started and get in and do that work. You know, just for my interview process, I feel like I connected really well with the interventionists that are in those buildings, and just excited to start doing the work with that. So I'm coming from Oshkosh as well. And we have done CKLA in my building and iReady. So I have a lot of background to bring on how we can utilize the curriculum and the resources we're going to have, and how we can impact students with that as well. So do you want to ask me what brought me to North Fond du Lac?
Yes, please.
Okay, I'd love to tell you about it. So I've been,
someone's walking out of here.
I've heard so much about this district, and, you know, coming from a larger district and seeing the impact that we can have with students is huge. My interview sold it, you know, just meeting the third grade teacher and meeting the 2 interventionists and principals that I'm going to be working with, and seeing that I feed so much off of good energy and excitement on things, and they picked up what I was putting down and met me with it. So that just kind of sold it for me too, is that I feel really connected with the people I'm going to be having to do work with. So do you have any questions for me? Thanks.
Just about to win.
Yeah, I
That's hey, we're inviting you to our closed meeting after this to talk about it.
He's joking.
Oh, okay. Karen, thank you so much.
Oh,
We're
I'm so
excited for you to be
excited.
part of the team. Welcome,
Thank
and
you.
look forward to working with you very, very shortly. So,
Ground running.
yes, absolutely. And our final position, and we've got Chris Schultz behind, just who is retiring from our district. So thank you for all you've done for our district over the years. And with that being said, we had a position open, obviously the Director of Student Services. Mr. Brad Ranke is here tonight as that representative coming into that position. He has been the AP at FLC for the past 3 years. He's had AP experience prior as well in the Fond du Lac area. He's taught as a special education teacher in this district. This is his home, and we are super excited that he's taking on this role and picking up where Chris left off and really supporting all of our students, but also all of our students in the special education.
I think you nailed it. Jeez. Yeah, just super grateful. Obviously, my journey started in special ed, and this has just always been that dream job. And super grateful for Lauren and FLC staff that given me the opportunity to continue to grow in this district and learn from each other. And obviously Chris for the path that she's kind of plowed here and set us up for some success in this district with special ed and just all kids in general. And I'm looking forward to kind of carrying that torch, so to speak, and working with all kids in the district. That's my excitement, is I get to get back in band and back in the high school and Treffort and other places to see kids that I've worked with along the way. And just, just very grateful and humbled. And this is my home. I'm excited. So
Awesome. Congratulations to everyone.
Thank you.
thank you.
Not a wrestler.
Right.
I told you.
And I really appreciate y'all coming in tonight. That means a lot for obviously the board too, to see the individuals who are coming in, who are going to be leading and influencing our students and our staff, and just making our whole district better every single day. So appreciate y'all. Thanks for being here. You are more than welcome to leave if you need to get on the road. You're more than welcome to stay. I guess I'm speaking for you, John, but that's usually the kind of thing we do.
Absolutely,
here,
yeah,
so.
yeah. Welcome to stay, welcome to leave, whatever works best for you. And thank you for spending time with us.
And then we're gonna have Treffort pick up, because we got guests here too, taking part in the data review.
You can't see it.
Drew, do you want to come on forward and do some introductions maybe to start off? Tiffany, if you want to introduce the rest of the players here that are going to share some of this data with us as well tonight. So.
Yeah, absolutely. So Dr. Ed Jedlicka is a member of our governance board, has been with us kind of since the start of Treffort, and has kind of taken the lead on some of the assessment data that they are going to be sharing with you. And Dr. Marlene, almost officially Dr. Marlena, who has been our doctoral intern at Treffort with us this year. Every year we get a doctoral intern who really assists us in the work, and same with collecting data in different ways. And they worked to put together a really cool presentation of some of the data results that we've gotten over the last 5-6-ish years. So do you guys want to go first? You guys can get out, both out of town area, and then I'll go, or?
Yeah. Tiffany, is this where you want to be, or where do you want to be?
Do you have this one?
Yes, I do. Yep, it's right
Maybe
on
use this one for that.
Yep.
Please, and thank you.
And I'm gonna just drop it back a little bit, or maybe start.
Do you have the PowerPoint or not?
I do not have the PowerPoint.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. No worries.
Okay.
So you'll
Talk
have
through
to shoot that, yeah. All right, so just to clarify, I'm a psychologist hired by SSM Health. And 6 years ago, I was on the team that wrote the grant and started the Treffort Way. And SSM has always been a big part, of the school, especially in the beginning stages of it. And I think one of the awesome things that they do for us is provides an intern every year who has the ability to assess all the kids. So
that's me.
That's right. So every year we have a new person or a new intern that comes. We have a very robust doctoral intern program at SSM Health, not only just in Fond du Lac, but all the 4 states that we're in. So we're really, privileged to have that.
And this year you guys got
piece of
me.
it. Yeah.
I've been a school psychologist for 4 years, and then went back to get my doctorate in neuropsychology. So the assessment process and collecting this data for Treffort is really rewarding, and I'm excited to share all the data.
So when we did start, we developed a hypothesis
right? Based on Dr. Treffort, who passed away a couple years ago, who was a psychiatrist at Winnebago for several years and then came to SSM Health. And our hypothesis was that the Treffort approach and strength-based learning would have a positive impact on individual academic success. And so one of the ways that we would do that is through the assessment piece. And we chose what's called the Woodcock-Johnson 4 Tests of Cognitive Abilities to really measure the kids to see if this approach truly was successful. And then we also developed our own social emotional learning assessment. And then we also use an executive functioning assessment too. So we test the kids in SEL and executive functioning every year, or give them that survey. And then we assess all the students upon starting at the Treffort Way, and then 3rd, 6th, and 9th grade. And then I'm going to share some of that data as to why we think that hypothesis was successful. So.
Okay, so if you see our fun sheet up here, it really demonstrates the way that we are kind of projecting, we are supporting the students' learning, right? So we do these assessments, but we're doing it based on the idea that the Treffort approach is effective. And so the Treffort approach, the goal is that it's effective at helping the students to access their learning. So, I mean, we were just talking about all the data, all the numbers, and all the literacy, and incorporating all of this into schools. But you can teach literacy to a room full of kids who don't have readiness to learn, and they're not going to learn. And so then looking at access to learning, we can see if the skills and the things that the teachers at Treffort Way are putting into place are able to enhance that learning ability. So when we're measuring access to learning, right, like what a strange thing to measure. So when we measure access to learning through the different assessments that we did, what we really want to do is see how the kids are able to demonstrate their capacity to learn. And so when we think about a capacity to learn, that's in essence their IQ, right? Your IQ is how capable are you to learn the information. And so to collect data to demonstrate that the students' IQs are increasing based on the approach that the Treffort approach is providing in Treffort Way is phenomenal. So up right under 2025 data, you'll see kind of a list there in orange, and that's the data specific to the IQ testing that we did. So what we found was that 56% of students improved in their overall IQ score. That improvement on average was 15 points, which is substantial. That is more than one standard deviation. So what that means is they likely went from below average to average or average to above average. That is a dramatic improvement. Additionally, we saw 66% of students demonstrate growth in their phonological processing. And so as we know, that's their foundational reading skills. So that's going to set the stage for them to really have future success in their reading. So it's very, very exciting. And this tells us that they're accessing their learning. And now we want to understand like how, right? Like what is happening at Treffort that is helping them to access their learning. So that's where you'll see kind of these next three phases here. We have the regulation, belonging, and the personalized approach. So I'm going to speak a little bit to the regulation. I know we've talked here tonight about like social emotional learning, right? And then executive functioning. So we're going to kind of touch on those 2 points. When we think about regulation, right? Kids can't access their learning without regulation, the same way we can't access our day without regulation, right? Like we need to be able to regulate our emotional self, our behavioral self, and then also access our frontal lobe and those executive functioning skills to actually be able to focus on and complete a task, right? And so these are the things that we want to know if they're growing and developing through the Treffort approach. And so as Ed mentioned, we do a survey for the parents, the teachers, and the students to look at both of those 2 content areas. And the results from those surveys are, again, fantastic. So we're seeing really great improvement. 62% of the students improved in their total social emotional learning score. And again, an average of 11 points. So that's 13% improvement from where they were. Really dramatic growth. Additionally, looking at their executive functioning, we looked at 5 different content areas, and the students increased in scores, their average scores increased in 4 out of those 5 areas. So we saw growth in their behavioral regulation, emotional regulation, organization, and plan management. The 5th area that we did not see growth in is time management, but I believe that adults are still working on time management.
So as we know, relationships are really a big key for students feeling like they belong in order for them to be prepared for learning. So 94% of the students at Treffort Way report that at least one adult, or they can go to at least one adult for help. And 83% report that they have a friend from school that they can count on for help no matter what. So again, relationships are extremely important there. And also kids learn best when instruction is scaffolded, especially to their appropriate level that meets them where they are, while simultaneously challenging them to grow and expand their skills. So 100% of students are placed in the appropriate level classroom for scaffolded learning and peer relationship development. And I think one of our unique tools at the Treffort Way is our Treffort Approach plans. And the TAP, as we call them, tracks updated information on each student's strengths, their interests, community participation, projects, and mentorships. And these really tie into one of the 6 areas of our Treffort Approach model. So teachers, students, and their families work collaboratively to create goals in each of those areas. And then the TAPs are reviewed at specific times of the year with students and their families. Any questions?
So I was gonna ask, because it seems like there's kind of a lot of different assessments that must have been done or observations. So was that series of testing, or how did you collect that data to get, this?
So the Woodcock-Johnson is about a 45 to 60-minute assessment, because we just do 7 subtests. So that takes, that individually with each student.
So you do that front end of the year and then in the.
Yep, so initially we tested 60 kids that first year.
Okay.
And then, again, typically every 3 years is what our goal was, but a lot of students left, right? Or some new students came, and COVID, of course, changed a lot of how we did things. But, so we had 44 students that we were able to pre-test and then post-test as well.
Okay.
And then the other ones are surveys that are given.
Every year.
She went to the classroom and gave each student those assessments on their laptops. And then we also asked parents, they were also given executive functioning, I think, or social emotional learning assessments. And then the teachers do them as well. So we actually get 3 in one and 2 in the other. And that's done every year.
And while it may not be reasonable to consider doing IQ tests for all the kids in all the districts, right? It is just data that tells us that the Treffort approach is effective. And so the things that the teachers are doing and the way that they're managing regulation and they're focusing on that social emotional in order to enhance education, I think is really the takeaway, because it's let's drill literacy to learn literacy, but we can't if they're not first accessing their learning, if we're not first focusing on their regulation and on their social emotional skills.
So that was really kind of my question is, and when we opened these charter schools, we had the conversation about using you as like an incubator for ideas on how, so what can we take from this and apply to the rest of the district? Is the question.
It's a great loaded question. I mean, at the same time, I think there's a lot, obviously, and I think what I heard too is like, if students aren't in a regulated state or even able to learn at that time, they're not, no matter what you throw in front of them, it's going to be a very, very difficult thing. And so what are some of the tools or strategies that they are doing in those classrooms or within their tiers that we could potentially start looking at as a full group and saying, how might that look in a elementary classroom? How might that look in a middle school classroom? And what would it entail to get to that spot with that teacher or those skill sets needed to make sure that happens? And that'd be more conversation with you all here and figuring that out. And I think that's a really important conversation discussion to have, because you see the numbers, it's fairly, I would say, really impressive in many of these areas and spaces. So it's definitely something to look at, as you said.
Yeah, I'm just thinking of, utilizing those, our Friday, I don't know what the heck, yeah, the development days to maybe share some of this in the future, for what techniques could be successful, right? Cool.
So the executive functioning, just in a short explanation of what is that looking at, or what is that for? I mean, what are you measuring?
So our executive functioning skills are the skills that we need in order to identify a goal and then work towards that goal. And so it's planning, organization, self-monitoring, right? So like, am I actually doing the thing I'm supposed to be doing? Initiation, a lot of times it's just getting started is really hard. So all of those, like I said, those frontal lobe executive functioning skills that, little kiddos have a harder time accessing, so they just need more support in getting that.
Thank you.
Any other questions for the doctors, we will say, at this point in time? Thank you so much for being here and being patient, waiting, and sharing this information. It's amazing, the work that you've all done, so appreciate you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Sorry, I missed you.
No, you're not.
Tiffany, I'm gonna just jump back
Yeah,
a little
so
bit for you,
then,
if that's good.
yeah, I just have our end of the year data here with our Ames Web assessment. So our goal in literacy was to have at least 50% of our students performing at or above the 50th percentile by the end of the school year. We started the year at 36% and we are at 51% right now. So we did see some really nice reading growth this year from our students. And then 84% of our students did demonstrate growth throughout the year. So obviously we want to keep shooting towards 100 of that. We want all of our students to be growing. But keeping in mind too that the Ames Web is like that one moment in time when they take this. So a lot of our teachers will say, and it's evident too, that there's other data that they have that even though they didn't show growth on this test, they're still growing throughout the year. And I just put our math data there as well. We had 47% of our students at or above the 50th percentile here in April. We started the year at 39, but 91% of our students did demonstrate growth in the Ames Web assessment when they took that. So not necessarily action steps, it's just reflection with our staff on like, what are things that like really went well this year? What are things we want to keep doing? What are maybe some changes we want to do in the future? And just, I know especially in the K1 class, like kids are reading, and even some of the kids who were like, I couldn't find my name on the first day of school, and now I just read this book to my teacher. And hearing the kids talk about the fact that they're reading has been really powerful this year, and they're viewing themselves as readers. Really digging in to meet kids where they were at. I know Heather in our K1 room spent a lot of time at the start of the year, and she was like, our first graders are not ready to start CKLA first grade. Like they're still missing some skills from last year. I know I didn't get to these skills. What do I do? There was a lot of discussion. I know she talked to Jen, if Jen is so here, she talked to Jen a lot about like, what should I do with all of this? And we decided let's meet them where they were at. And by meeting them where they're at, they have now finished kindergarten and gotten through almost the entire first grade curriculum as well. So really taking that opportunity to meet the kids where they are at. And then just being strategic. We don't have as big of a literacy block built into our day. So really picking which parts of CKLA do our students need, which parts of literacy are incorporated into our projects that maybe don't need a separate literacy block, but you're still getting all these literacy skills within the projects that our teachers are creating and that our students are creating. We did a lot of small group instruction in centers in K3 especially, helping kids find joy in reading. This was our first year really having an intervention time built into our schedule. So teachers really getting to dive into those specific skills in an intervention time was also something we want to maintain moving forward. And then just changes we can make or things to continue to do is building that grade level vocabulary. That was one of our pockets that is sometimes a little bit lower when we dig into our data through curriculum, through projects. Looking if we can share students even more among our classes. So we try to have school-wide literacy at least for an hour block. So if some kids need to bump up or we need to do review of skills with certain kids, we can share teachers. It's not necessarily grade level based. Continuing to look at our interventions and our intervention process and how we're documenting that. And then just continuing to build those centers even in our upper grades. We have a lot of different levels of learners, as do all schools, and how can we better meet that maybe through smaller groups and centers that are specific to their needs. So that's our academic data, if you have any questions.
I thought it was some nice improvement for the year.
And then I put our survey results there. So our survey is a little bit different. We have some questions that are the same as the other buildings, but we also throw in questions a little bit related to our Treffort approach. So you can see I just have fall to spring data on here, but I highlighted in green just some of our wins. And one of our biggest wins this year is I know strategies available to me at school if I'm feeling upset, frustrated, or overwhelmed. Went from a 69% to 87% in the spring. And that kind of correlates with some of what Ed and Marlena were talking about too, that the kids are more regulated, they're able to access their learning, but they're knowing and more familiar with those strategies too. The one right below it, confidence in completing the work assigned to them. A little bit lower, if they have a friend from school, went from 83 to 87, feeling safe at school went up 80 to 84. So definitely nice growth in some of those. Couple goals for us, like how excited about you going to classes, dropped from 53 to 42, which is a little disappointing because usually we see that go up at the end of the year when kids are super engaged in the end of the year, like school-wide project that we're doing. So we definitely want to dive into that more, even before the end of this year, going back to the kids and be like, hey, like what are things that you really liked about school this year? What are things we should keep doing? What are things we should maybe change or keep in mind for next year? Just as we're thinking and planning over the summer, taking the students' thoughts into account. And then just if you walked into any class upset, would your teachers be concerned? Dropped slightly over the year. So I would definitely want to know more too about how we can help support that. So reflections from this year and next year. So Karen Bartelt, Beth Dardis, and Brenda Slotin led a book study on body-brain brilliance that really focused on co-regulation between adults and students. And then they also pushed into one of our classes and did lessons with the students on regulation and understanding their bodies and what their bodies might need. So we want to keep that going next year and then also see if we can get pushing into more classes besides just the one. Just continuing to help students grow in their confidence to do things, continue focusing on relationships, both students to staff and students to students, and just continuing to build on school safety and the plans that we have in place that we've created. Changes, like I said, diving into strengths even more, passions, and see if that can increase our excitement about class a little bit. And then we want to just do better at diving into this data with specific students so it can drive conversations with specific students, drive how we can help specific students. So any questions on that?
I don't, not specific to this, but just on safety in general. I know Brad always shares a lot of great work that the team's been doing over the last couple of years on safety. So like physical safety feels good. Like, what do you think, because this isn't the only one, what do you think the dip in safety is from? Like, is it just a sense of safety or is it?
I think I mean, even though you heard some of that information, I think it really has to be tapped into that percentage of people. Like what it means, safe can mean so many different things. Am I emotionally safe? Am I physically safe? And dissecting it from that one question is, I think, a really difficult thing to do without analyzing specifically and interviewing those kids and saying, what are you worried about? Or what are you worried about in terms of safety? Until we do that, I can't give you like a definite answer. I don't know.
So, yeah, I think just nationwide too, what kids are seeing on TV. I mean, things are happening in schools nationwide. So when you ask the question of do you feel safe and you're entering school every day, some kids are going to say no. And that's part of, when we talk about at our safety team is that good enough for us? No, it's not, right? So how do we pinpoint that and how do we look at what is some of those things that are topics that kids are feeling uncertain about? Is it that there are different school things going on nationwide, or is it within our buildings that things are happening? And how do we find those things, and then what do we do with them, right? What are our action steps at that? For us at elementary, it's do you feel safe? I mean, that could be, hey, on the playground, that slide is really fast, and I don't feel safe about that, right? I mean, that question gets tricky to try to distinguish what does that really mean. And I think as we move forward, just really looking at that question to pinpoint some of those, they'll highlight some of those things that kids are really worried about. That's how I think we improve that. And that's going to take some work, but I think we can do it.
Yeah, all the amazing things that have been going on with it. That's the part I was like, what's driving that, right when I looked through the packet before we came in today, so.
It kind of makes you wonder though, like if that question needs to be like broken up or something,
We
like,
talked about that as a cultural
because how do you,
team.
if you
Yes.
can't get good data from that, then, you know.
Get a little more specific in some of those
Right.
areas, like what does that mean for
Right.
people, so they have an understanding of how they
So
can
then you
actually
can
answer the
action it,
question.
right?
Right,
Yeah.
right. Very fair. Any other questions for Tiffany? Great job. Thank you so much. Great job.
Thank you.
Awesome. All right, we're gonna go with the high school because Dwayne's got a long night tomorrow night and he's got a lot of stuff to get through. So I'm gonna turn over to Dwayne and Carrie too. So moving forward, I got you, let me see my number here, 8.
When you get to go to page 2 right away. The first page is just our baseline data from the start of the year.
Yeah.
So on the second page, I have that and our end of year. So high school, we took some retired ACT questions, our focus for the past 2 years since I've been here. First off, big shout out to Jen Towell and Kurt Wismer on A, helping create this assessment, and B, just helping provide those skills in that. So our goal will remain with that is just expanding our vocabulary knowledge and word meaning with the understanding that if your vocabulary expands, your ability to read, write, and communicate also expands with that. So our baseline for our freshmen was 47%. End of the year, we were at 53% on that. So we did see a slight increase there of 6%. We did not meet our end of year goal in any of our grade levels, but I do think we maybe had that a little too lofty, to be honest with you. Sophomore baseline was 48, end of year was 53, so 5% growth. Juniors 53 with an end of year of 55. And then seniors 56 to 57. One asterisk I'll put there is maybe trying to get the seniors to do a spring end of year assessment might not be my best step moving forward because we only had about 48 of them actually. So that number I would say is a little skewed, to be completely honest with you. How do we get there? I mean, this year and last year, we spent a lot of time in our PD and our CT time on just how do we put vocabulary, knowledge, and expansion into every content area at the high school. So how does that look in our music, our Phi Ed, Tech Ed, and ELA for that matter? So how can we do that in each class and making sure that we are being focused on our content area? So with that, again, we saw some growth there. I'll go through some action steps at the end, but then if you scroll down a little more, Dr. Mino, another snapshot, I know Jen's here too. In Mr. Moffey's class, what we did, we focused on a tier 1 intervention this year around fluency in his classroom. So that was all the students he encountered on a daily basis. And Jen, I don't want to speak about 5 to 7 minutes he would spend to kick off each class.
Yep.
So just a small snapshot of time, just focusing on their fluency. A big gap, I'll be completely honest with you, at the high school historically has been any intervention whatsoever. It's kind of just a word that if you bring it up, it's like, what is an intervention? And again, no wrongdoing to anyone, I won't say, but I wanted to include this in our data just because we're being really proactive with what we're at. And I know it's in that conversation this morning. We know when we get students, what is your baseline? How do we move you forward? And so much of that focuses on growth right now. And quite frankly, we're a growth district. Our achievement historically hasn't been phenomenal, but our ability to grow is a huge opportunity we can harness. So again, Mr. Mothey's snapshot here, his beginning of the year fluency rates, like he averaged about a 36% growth. So if you scroll down and then there's another table too, Dr. Mino, just again, in a 5 to 7 minute snapshot each day in this classroom, the ability for students' fluency to grow this year was unbelievable. And the reason I bring up that this is proactive and why I want to include that is we're being very strategic on how we're putting interventions in place at the high school now with other teachers and staff members leaning into this on how can we schedule that in. So we also added supervisions this year, so like building rovers, things like that, but also now strategically finding what are those students now, instead of tier 1, how can we get to that tier 2, tier 3 focus and our most struggling students. So this is a good just little dipstick of where we're headed. And we're super excited with that. And again, Jen is working with that. We have about 4 staff already dialed in for next year to do a lot of this intervention work with us. And it's too good not to celebrate right there. And we're excited about that piece too. And that brings up my next point. Next year, our focus will move a little bit from the vocabulary we're going to start diving into because fluency feeds comprehension. It's just one of the buckets that feeds into it is how can we continue to build that comprehension skill? And this is proactive, knowing Act 20 is only going to follow these students. So right now it's predominantly in that elementary level, but we know that'll be in the high school's doorstep pretty quick here. So focusing there. Other things too, we know we get a lot of other data, ACT pre, ACT forward. From there, we did not do Ames Web for our general education students at the high school. That was only our special education, which I know Chris will report on later. We were just told that's not necessarily great data for us to use at the high school level. Just even iReady moving forward, that'll predominantly be a special education one for the high school, not general ed. Just again, the data isn't necessarily super useful for us because they should be beyond those pieces. But again, something we can consider. But as we move forward, that's a focus Jen and I have, and even working with Kara, who here are lit coordinator for the district. How can we continue to do that? And I know the question was brought up earlier too, like how do you make sure what you're doing, your CT and your PD times is what's the follow through? So fidelity checks is a big thing. High school, being in those classrooms, working with staff, having those conversations, because what we found at the high school, and Jen can even speak to that too, is there's just a lot of good questions. Like, am I doing this right? A lot of the times they need that assurance that they're doing it well and kind of patting them on the back as they go too. So that's kind of a good step for us at the high school is just what are those non-negotiables in your classroom that you should be doing? So if I walk in, a board member, Dr. Mino, like this is across the curriculum at the high school and making sure that's in place. And everything we did this year, CT-wise and PD on our Fridays tied to that. Another thing we dove into second semester is we really started to look at depth of knowledge questions. So what are we asking students? Because we're getting really laser focused on what do we want to teach our students, but then how are we asking questions to prove they've learned what we've taught them? So that's been a big focus on looking at our scope and sequence, learning targets as a whole. What are we doing in our classrooms and our curriculum work to make sure the questions I'm posing to students is actually giving me the data I want, kind of to Jacob's point earlier, like, are we actually asking the right questions? And that's been a good organic piece, working with John Graff at CISA 6 on that. And I'm excited to continue working with him as we look at our ACT data, as that rolls in here that we just received on our juniors. We know that's lagging data, but what are those gaps we're seeing? Because those gaps will be there next year as well. But now how can we get ahead of that and then keep attacking different angles? So again, though we didn't meet our goals, we are pretty just invigorated by the continued growth in our students there. So that's kind of it for academics. Any questions for us at the high school?
When you say DOK, that can you give a little better understanding of that for them? Because just the concept and like how that links into assessment and other things for people.
Yeah, so 4 levels of depth of knowledge. You got 1 through 4. 4 is very heavy on like a project, almost like long-term sequence. I know, really showcasing it. Whereas a level 1 is just true or false. George Washington was our first president. Like that's a level 1. Can they be useful? Absolutely. Should that be 90% of our questioning though? No, because ACT is predominantly a level 3 and some level 2 questions. So that's been a big focus for us is, are we actually getting to that threshold we want? 2/3 or so being a level 2 or 3. Layering in a few, like Mr. Wismer and them do a great job. Tech Ed, I would say too, for like a level 4, that whole project for you. And just making sure we pick our level 1s when we need to. Great ways to warm up in class, get students started, settled in, but really just starting to focus in now, are we being intentional on the questions we're even asking for what we want back?
Thank you.
Any other academic questions?
Yeah, I guess can you explain with Mr. Moffy's class, what that looks like when you say 5 to 7 minutes at the beginning of the class or to gauge fluency and things like that?
So Jenna, that's where I'll maybe tag team in a little bit here. So she actually screened every student in that grade level for us.
Okay.
And so a huge uplift for Jen there and Mr. Moffy being willing to lead that work and kind of showcase it. So Jen, I don't want to misspeak. You just want to walk through what maybe those first few minutes look like.
Sure. So in the beginning of the year, I had every single freshman read to me. So when you talk about discrepancy in scores, that's huge, right? If they're reading to a person or whether they even take the test, that's huge, especially in high school. So I had every student read to me and scored them in both fluency and comprehension to figure out where are their deficits, because we don't know. I thought it would be much lower, kind of
lower down on the decoding, but it really wasn't. It was that fluency and understanding punctuation, reading it like the author intended, right? So there is a system out there called the 6-minute solution that does take a little more than 6 minutes. So in just my experience over my 25 years in reading, I kind of tweaked it a little bit to how it would work in a class of 30. The kids pair up, they have their folders, they have their story that they're gonna read that day, and they're reading about a page-ish of text to a partner. That partner's following along with them, writing down what errors they make, where they make those errors, not interrupting them, but just writing them down. Then you have about 30 seconds for that person to say, hey, here's where you missed, here's what you didn't do well. And then you're like, oh yeah, next time I'm gonna get it. So then you switch and the other person reads, and they read for about a minute. So the following day, or every other day, I believe Mr. Mothy did, you then read the exact same text you read the day before. So you're not reading anything new, you're just correcting what you've read before. And there's a lot of research in if you do repeated readings, when you read something you've never read before, you'll do better. I don't understand it as much as I know it to be true, right? So if they're reading these stories, they read the same story for 1 full week of time, which I believe in his class was 3 days. Then they move on to the next, and it's all grade level text. So we're also giving them grade level material. So no matter how low or how high they are, they're getting grade level text that they're getting exposure to and practice with. So then he had kind of this little, see what hour could do it the fastest. So get your folders, get them going, and then thus it brings it down to about 5 minutes a day.
Cool, thank you.
Another cool part, Mr. Mothy is a social studies teacher.
Yeah.
So now getting that embedded into our ELAs as well, our sciences. So those are the nice next steps to take, is we can do this in any content area. There's no reason of physical education class, things like that. So that's kind of the cool, exciting part of the high school right now. Staff are getting like, this is a cohesive work. These are universal practices we need to all be doing because it's good for kids. So we're pumped about it. I'll go into SEL next then. I'll try to move a little bit quicker through that one. So on there, we have the 4 color coded too. So our fall data from last year all the way to our spring data this year. A couple cool highlights for us. One of our biggest growth areas was do you feel safe at school? One thing to take with that fall data you get each year, but there's a whole new class in that data. So like this year, last year's 8th graders were part of our fall data, so we expect a little bit of a lag at times, but so that was one. We're up to 83% to Brad's point before. Is that good enough? No, absolutely not. We want to get that closer to 100. I will say, I think an increase in the high school on that question was inadvertent. We had quite a few medical holds and emergencies at the high school where students firsthand got to see what our medical response teams look like. So to see 8 trusted adults running to a classroom to make sure a student or a staff member for that matter are safe and able, I think kind of opened the kids' eyes, and a lot of good comments from them like, holy cow, you guys have it together. So inadvertently, I think that really helped that question. I'll add in one that always kind of intrigues me at high school. How excited are you for class? 24%. I don't really know how to take that one sometimes at the high school because I get it. Maybe we have different reasons, but that's one we want to dabble into a little bit more next year as well. What does get you excited for class? Because then they'll answer later that 90% of you feel your teachers are excited for class, and you're seeing that. So just kind of one, I look at the school rules. I know we took a dip there at the fall, the cell phone policy, which I think we'll talk more about later with some of our behavior data. But another good one that we also, with our SEL lessons, so the way we do it every Monday during Oriole time, there is a canned lesson for our entire student population at the high school, focusing on, do you feel safe at school, trusted adult, just skills of their peer conflict, things like that. So focusing on that, it always takes a dip on how often we can do those in that February time, so we're getting ready for state testing, but that's been a big piece. But one layer we added in, because we knew this is just 2 data points, we started implementing our peace index and our hope meter. This really helped us with the question of, do you have a teacher or adult at school you can trust? So by the hope meter peace index, what that did, we did that about 7 times this year. It gave us another snapshot of just how kids are feeling on that given day. how are you doing at home? Do you have the food you need? Things like that. Just kind of layered it. And then I allowed my counselors to wrap around on those. So if they were rated, it's a red, yellow, or green there. So if you were red, they took the time to meet with them. And what we found out on that question, and I highlight that, is just pretty simple. A lot of kids said they don't need a trusted adult at school. They said, I'm good. I got mom, dad, aunt, uncle at home. Like, there's adults here that care, but I don't necessarily need one. So that was a good one. Where are we going next? So forward thinking. We plan to focus a little bit more on continuation of peer conflict next year. We saw a nice decrease in that this year, and just building that school, continuing to dig in deeper, again, to Jake's point before on, is that question good? Why don't you feel safe at school? And just kind of going from there, and continuing with that peace index and that hope meter, just to get more dipsticks on kids to make sure they feel good. Because as they pointed out from Treffort, if you're not ready to learn, you can't learn. So any questions on SEL before I kick it over to Nitz? All right, here, floor is yours.
Sounds good. So a lot of great things to celebrate at Horace Mann when it comes to behavior. Our behavioral referrals were significantly down this year. We saw a 40% decrease in those referrals. It's interesting to note that November and February had some, like a 53 and a 87% decrease. And I wanted to point that out because February historically has been high because people are like waiting for spring break, and staff's getting antsy, students are getting antsy. And so that's historically has been high. So that's a great celebration. I think part of what played a role in some of our data here is, incorporating those supervision duties that Mr. Harkoff had put into place, and really just having the presence around our building. Staff are out in the hallways during passing times and in the classrooms during instructional teaching time, during class time. So really having a great supervision strategy for our students, which we know reduces behavior issues. We did see a pretty significant increase in our minor behaviors, and that is largely due to our implementing our cell phone policy. Probably 75% of our minor behaviors were technology violations, not having their phones in the pouches where they belong, or they're falling out of your pockets, or being on your phone or things like that. And then also the incorporation of, when we talk about technology violations, we also talk about academic dishonesty, people using ChatGPT and AI, things like that, to complete their academic work. And teachers have just been a little bit more diligent about that. Again, overall, we've seen some great improvements at Horace Mann when it comes to our behavior data.
Questions in that area? And again, I think we talked about this a little bit in the fall, but like even in the comments with how that's all spread out, have we seen, behaviors as many, or is there any numbers on that as well, or is that been a drop?
We had, what, half a dozen fights in the comments? And 0 risk.
Yeah.
More space, more proximity, more staff. We have lunch supervisors now too. I know I get called, Ms. Nitz gets called a lot when lunch is going. Sometimes that's when behaviors are, so I made sure to have staff in those areas where there are adults at all times, not all just falling on a couple people. And I think, again, proximity deters so many behaviors. And we stress that so much out of the gate at the high school, where you need to be near, you need to hear, you need to see it, and then address it. And that's been a huge piece, is your kids know there's really no cutting the corners with us. And the other reminder is there's cameras everywhere. So we get a report that you did X, Y, Z. Well, you did X, Y, Z, and now you're gonna be held accountable. And I think a big piece we didn't really talk about, we really just made it clear to our students, this is our behavior matrix. If you do this, this is the consequence. If you do that, this is the consequence. And holding true and consistent. Big shout out to Ms. Nitz on that, because oftentimes she kind of puts out some of those fires right in the moment. And now students just know, if I'm doing that, I'm gonna be held accountable. So that, again, could it change next year? You never know. Yeah, but each year is different, but I think it's a huge piece right now.
Any other questions from the group?
Do you want to talk about attendance real quick?
Oh, yeah, sorry.
So like we have historically seen, the attendance, once you get to the high school level, kind of dips down a little bit, as we go through our educational buildings here. But we still have 93% of our students meeting the district's attendance threshold. And our chronic absenteeism, not great, but it remained the same. So it didn't increase, so that's a good celebration as well. Yeah.
Any other questions from the group? I forgot to mention this though. We've got a lot of celebrations tonight. There is a cake over there. We honor, our sheet cake moments in terms of, doing these great things. There's a lot of work behind all this. And I mean, you're only getting a fraction of what is actually being done by all these individuals, but I just want to make sure that we recognize all the work that's happening, and our leaders right now are moving it. And yeah, it is going to be different in some places. I mean, I even think about the supervision aspect of it. That's going to be at BAMS next year too. Those are things that just weren't there, and all this stuff takes a little bit of time, but I am really excited about some of the things that are happening here at all levels that are going on, but appreciate that.
I think Dwayne, I think this is awesome, like, just based on our conversation from last year and, figuring things out and then setting your plan and seeing, maybe not all the percents you wanted, but consistent growth across all the spaces, or holding strong on other ones, I think. So thank you for your leadership at that building, and then I know there's a lot of people that support you and making that happen, but it's good to see.
We got an awesome staff and great kids, so I'm fortunate. For the record, that is not a sheet cake, sir. That is a small cake.
Talk to Natalie. I'm gonna put Natalie on the spot here. You can record that right now.
That is a Dwayne.
Yeah. Dwayne's gonna walk out with the whole thing tonight. Yeah. Rick, yeah. This was not on it. I will send it to you right after this. It just wasn't added. So apologize for that.
You're thinking I'm stupid.
Yeah, no. You're right on, because I was looking forward to it today, and then we put it on, so.
Would you want a paper copy?
I'd rather have you.
Okay.
Okay.
Do you want me to cut the cake and start serving it?
If people want it, that's fine, Chris. Yeah, we can do that. People want it. Okay, I don't know, Chris or Lauren, who do you want to go?
Oh, okay.
Okay.
All right.
I'm just gonna get you to your spot here. Let's see. Yeah. There we go.
I'm gonna dip out. Thank you, guys.
Have a good night.
All right.
See you tomorrow.
Yep. Don't take the whole thing.
So before I get into the academic piece, I just wanted to highlight a few things in our special education department this year that really helped us with our achievement. One is our joint federal notification packet. And I think Matt may have gone over that with you when that data came out. But a part of that packet is the IDEA, and there's pieces of it. It's basically our special education report card. And this report helps inform our district with continuous improvement efforts so that we can strategically target and close gaps to support our student growth. So some of those things are our participation rate in math assessment and ELA, our educational environment, that talks about our inclusive efforts. So whenever we have students who are removed from the gen ed environment, we lose points. So all of these different pieces play into our score, and I'm happy to report that we earned an 83% this year, which is good. That means we meet requirements, and that's a good thing. When I started, we were at 69%. So every year we keep inching up. We were at 94% in 22-23, but that's thanks to all the efforts on behalf of our staff and really working hard to make compliance. So that is a win. Another celebration is the continued increased collaboration between our special ed teachers and the buildings. We talked about breaking down the silos and having
having more collaboration so that we have more consistency in how we're working with our students. So a couple examples of that at ELC with our youngest learners, they start that transition planning already in January for kids who are moving from 4K or EC up to kindergarten. And we have 4K meetings every month and we're planning for those transitions. But our EC teachers are always talking with FLC, and we even have one of our paras from ELC and over to FLC on Fridays. And just that consistency of knowing the kids, what worked the year prior, and carrying that over has really helped. And we've had more communication with Lauren and Brad in the past year. So there's a lot of effort that's gone into that. Also our related services, like our speech, OT, PT, they're in all of the buildings. And so all of those strategies that work, they're talking about that. So it's a lot of communication, because when you're working with special education students, you can really get focused in on what you're doing, but you have to think about where they're heading next and what is the big picture. So that's important. At FLC, our teachers talk with BAMs, and we're preparing for those transitions for fifth grade to sixth grade. That happens with emails, with them visiting each other, and then being invited to IEP meetings. So when a fifth grader has their annual IEP meeting, that sixth grade special ed teacher is invited and is learning about that student and what's working. What are you using for a math intervention or a reading intervention? So that's all important work. And then finally, that transition from 8th to 9th grade. And I've really seen a lot of growth in that area where our special ed teachers are talking daily. And actually our 9th grade cross-categorical special ed teacher is actually teaching math in that 8th grade space. So he's working with our students on those strategies and preparing them for what life is going to look like when they move on to high school. Because if there's a big change, we require more independence. And so we want to prepare our 8th grade students for that transition. So that's a win. And then finally, I wanted to share the percentage of students with disabilities in our district decreased from last year. So I figured you would ask this question, is it comparative with the enrollment? And it actually is. Our enrollment in 23-24 was 1,555 students. This year, 1,561 students. So it's the same, six students difference. And last year, we had 21% of our students receiving special ed. This year, 19%. And if you look historically, in 18-19, 23% of our students were receiving special education services. And we can't control that. We are here to serve students and based on their needs, but what we're doing is we're really taking a closer look at the criteria and if students really need and require special ed. And sometimes the student will have a disability, but they don't require special education services to progress in the general education curriculum. Every 3 years, we are required to reevaluate our students and have those conversations. And sometimes parents will say, well, I really like to have my student in special education because they get extra support, with homework and things like that. And our team has really been more clear about the purpose of special ed and that we're really here to support those skills and development. And then there's that time when they're ready to move on from the services. So, and also this approach ensures that we're not watering down our special education services because there are kids that need them and may need them through their whole academic career, and that's perfectly fine. So those are some things I wanted to highlight. I'm really proud of our department. And then for CSIP, our goal was that by May, 50% of students with disabilities in K through 11 would be proficient in math and reading. And we used Ames Web, and we've talked a lot about different assessments this year. This is the first year that we actually had apples to apples data to compare. We've never had that before. And Ames Web was chosen because of Act 20. We had to use that, we were required to use that with elementary. And so we used that district-wide. Well, in the fall, the first slide, that's okay, you don't have to show that,
Okay.
Dr. Nino, but my very first slide, we didn't have any data because Ames Web wasn't up and running yet for our 6th through 12th graders. So we started mid-year. So our first dipstick was, and if you want to go to the mid-year,
Sure.
just to show.
Right there?
There you go. So I highlighted it in green. So reading comprehension, we have the different buildings. Now, these are all students with disabilities. So reading was at Treffort Way was 0%. These are students who are above the 50 percentile. FLC was 18. Treffort Way was 50. BAMS was 23. Horace Mann, 38%. And if you look at the second bar, that's highlighting the students who were above the 50th percentile in math. So Treffort Way was 26%, FLC 26, Treffort Way 6 through 8, 18, BAM 6 through 8, 21, Horace Mann 9 through 11. And we move to the spring data, so end of year. And again, Ames Web is one data point. We have a lot of other information, but this is what we are using to compare apples to apples. End of the year, you can see highlighted in green. I won't read all of the scores. And keep going, Dr. Nina, like. So scroll down to the orange. That's the summary of progress in reading for our various buildings. And I put a little arrow to show if there was growth, or if they stayed the same, or if there was a decline. And again, this is a data point. It's not perfect, but this is what we used. And according to Ames Web, we had in reading 13% growth, K through 5. We had 1% growth, K through 5 at FLC. Treffort Way was 10% growth. BAM stayed the same, and Horace Mann, there was a decline of 14%.
Just, I think there's some math errors in there, because I went and compared them up above, so the Horace Mann actually went down 24. And then on the next one in the math, Treffort Way went down 13, it didn't stay the same. And the next one, the FLC, it went up 1, not 9.
This is actually compared to the beginning of the beginning, so.
Right, I'm comparing, so I'm pretty positive I did it right.
I'll take a look at that, Rick. Thank you. And then math, Treffort Way stayed the same, and then FLC saw 9% growth in math. Treffort Way 6 through 8 stayed the same. We saw 1% decline at BAMS, and then 47% growth in math at Horace Mann. And to be fair to Horace Mann, not all took Ames Web. They were taking doubles, so it's not perfect data, but it is 1 point. And it's the first time that we've had comparative data across the district. So I'm excited to hear that they're considering iReady next year. I think that will give you even better data, and you'll be able to drill down more to really look at what those skills are. So then action steps. Let me scroll down to next year. All students with IEPs will take a common assessment in the fall, winter, and spring. Hopefully that will be iReady. The second, after analyzing spring 2025 achievement data, educators will identify specific lagging skills in reading and math for students with disabilities that hinder that progress. Working with general education teachers to continue to receive professional development and guidance, and identifying high leverage universal reading and math strategies and embedding these into instructional planning at the tier 1 level through intentional collaborative time with special education teachers. And number 4, special education teachers will select an intervention for reading or math that has the best potential to address lagging skills and support growth. Sometimes we try an intervention and we don't see much progress and we need to adjust our sales. The special education teachers will receive ongoing guidance and support with delivering the intervention. And this library of interventions continues to grow, which is very exciting. We added trans math this year to our BAMS and Horace Mann program. And then finally, we'll continue to monitor our achievement with our dashboard that we have on EduClimber, which is already being utilized on NextPath. Overall, we didn't reach all of our goals, but we're definitely making progress and I'm proud, and it does take time. Special education students, it's depending on the disability, we really are looking at some growth. And hitting that 50th percentile may not be possible for some, but if we keep moving in an upward direction, then we're really happy with that. Do you have any questions for me?
All right, thank you, Chris, appreciate it.
Thank you.
Are you ready?
We're ready.
Okay, I'm gonna flip out and then, is that what you want to be on, this one right here?
Yeah, the one
Yeah.
I shared with you earlier.
Yeah.
Yep, perfect.
Of course. Yeah, elementary, we go a little different here with slideshows, so sorry about that.
We did some screenshots, so we tried to stay consistent, but it's a little
So,
different.
yeah, I'm just gonna touch quickly on safe and emotional healthy schools at FLC. We've done a lot of work around restorative conversations in our building. We continuously try to practice that and model that as best we can as our SEL team and others. We have some really great leaders in our building, teachers that have kind of rolled with this and have kind of spread the wealth, so to speak, on what those practices are and how we're doing them within our building. A big win in general is our minors. We're down 75 this year, which is, it may not seem like a lot, but it's a lot when you're talking about minors. And just with some of those behaviors that we have there, those are some of our top 3. Keeping hands and feet to self, those are probably always going to be number 1. That's one of those biggest skills that we teach in elementary is, how do you deal with problems? Not with your hands and feet, right? But we're continuously to work in that space. Difficulty with transitions. We kind of eliminated recess, added some teacher movement and different things. So we have a lot more transitions and had to do a lot more coaching and teaching around, how do we walk in a hallway? What is our voice levels at? If you're in FLC, you can see some of our above the line behaviors, below the line behaviors that we continuously try to teach our kids and remind them of those behaviors and expectations. And that difficulty just with redirection in general. Last year, our top 3 were kind of playground, hallway, and classroom. But this year it's classroom, bathroom, cafeteria. So we really looked at some of the playground and the hallway areas and tried to pinpoint some things we could do differently in there. And obviously that works, but it brings up other areas that now we have to look at too. Classroom, that's a new one, just in terms of just new curriculum and different things in that space that have created kids more in that space, so to speak. Versus maybe some other places like the double recess using those transitions and those types of things. So bathroom is always a tricky one in elementary. We have it, it's great, but it's not probably the best place because we don't have any supervision there all the time, right? That's what we have to get better in that space is some of those areas that lack that supervision sometimes. Cafeteria is one. That's an interesting one. Our SEL team was really overloaded that as we looked at that mid-year to say, oh boy, cafeteria recess, we're having some issues out there. We went from about 3 teachers out there to about 7 or so or more. So we really tried to overload that to help support some of those needs and spaces and be able to teach and coach them out in that moment with kids. I think that's really helped. Majors are up a little bit. We had some pretty key, as you'll see on the next slide, key players that kind of are the majority of some of those that we had to work through some situations and be able to help and guide their support. Increased us a little bit, but we want to make sure that we're transparent on what's happening in our building and know how we can help and support each kid. So obviously difficulty with hands and feet again, getting along with others, and then using appropriate language has been some of those big incident codes that we had this year. classroom recess and hallway. Those are our typical top 3. So again, it's supervision, and how much we can do that and keep loading in those spaces. So,
Can you talk about you said you had 213?
yeah, we had 213 plus restorative conversations. Less than 20 of those led to majors. So that work it's going well. It's going very well. We just have a lot of people leading in that space right now, and we're trying to track as much as we can to see, are those conversations we're having, are they leading to majors? Are they not leading to majors? And, if they are, what is that? And how can we get some action steps around that or help support those kids in different spaces, SEL or other? Some of those kids may have different programming like special ed or BML, and we just try to look at how do we support all those kids in that space. So, then just suspensions in general, we had 10 in-school suspensions. Those are generally around the hands and feet, a lot of those recess areas, track areas, teacher-led movement, and then out of school we had 9. We had, like I said, we had some pretty big key players early on in the beginning of the year that needed some different supports or different services that we provided, and we're able to get them in situations where they can be successful. We're talking about 17 kids here, basically 23 days total in terms of what our suspensions look like. It's not a typical thing we like to do in elementary. There are pieces that we have to unfortunately do some of that so we can get kids regulated and talk about the restorative piece and have parents in and have conversations with safety plans and different things. So that's kind of where they originate from. Yeah. And then attendance, big shout out to Erica Harbath, Cody Hernandez, and Nicole Garcia. They are part of our FLC attendance team. This is always a work in progress. This is one of the toughest, most time-consuming things you can do and track, and my team is incredible, and I wouldn't be able to do this without them. 95% of the time, our kids on a daily basis are in their seat. That number, as you can see on the bottom, has been pretty consistent. It's dipped a little, but not a lot. Kids want to be here, and we put things in place to try to help support our families the best we can. Unfortunately, sometimes we do go that chronic absentee, as you can see. 3 out of 615 of our kids are at that high risk level. That's pretty good. That's really good. That's a huge win for us. Next Path has really started to open our eyes on what does our chronic absentee look like and how can we help and support those individual kids. 49 out of 616 are kind of in that some risk area. And then when you look at on a watch and low risk, we have some pretty high totals there. So I'm really excited about some of that data and just looking at 7.6 of our kids are chronically absent. Most of them are on attendance plan or other, as we like to say in that area, just different supports and help that we try to do. It's a constant communication and just trying to knock down some barriers to help families get kids to school. So, and then just looking at some of our panorama data, looking at school climate. So that was if you walked into class upset, would your teacher be concerned? 95% of our kids said, yeah, they would be concerned. So, that's a big number. It's obviously we want it to be 100%, but 95% is really good. So always room to grow. Supportive relationships. You have that trusted adult, that trusted family member, trusted friend, 91%. So although very high, we want to continue to build on those trusted adults within our buildings and, obviously help them lean in on family members and friends. And then you look at student mindset, we're at 89%. That's that do you feel safe? That's where we have to look at how do we pinpoint that a little bit and what our kids are not feeling safe about. 89% is fairly good, but obviously not good enough. And then student engagement, we're down to that 53%. That's how excited are you for class? There's different equations and different things that fall into there. I'll talk probably a little bit more on the next slide on that. This just kind of compares, we had one class didn't take it, and then we had some of our questions switched a little bit from spring of 24 to 25. So the data is a little off. There are some things to compare from. We were able to take a look at a little bit of those comparisons. Obviously the big one that sticks out is that school engagement piece. And as we continue to try and work through our new curriculum and building through circles, our morning circles and we're trying to build on those and those connections and how we can, get kids engaged a little more on that. And then obviously through CT and other, looking at how do we get our tier 1 instruction to the level of engaging our kids. As you look through and, sitting in Lauren and I's seat when we're evaluating teachers, you look at where they were in September to where they are now. It's incredible the growth that we've had within our CKLA, and just, I know those numbers will continue to grow. And, math wise, when you walk in a classroom, kids are engaged, they're writing on windows, sometimes desks, which is what we don't want them to do, but hey, they're learning and they're engaged and they want to be there and participate. So that's a big part of it. When you look at the next slide, just that celebration, this is another big shout out to Erica Harbath and Rachel Plotchek, just SEL team in general. Is, we had some data early on that said, we have kids that don't have that trusted adult. We had 18 kids. So we looked at a mentor program and had different teachers sign up to help, whether that's twice a week or once a week, checking in with kids or eating with them or doing different activities, shooting hoops in the gym, whatever that may be, to try to get that number and be able to build some of those connections. And, we had 9 of them indicated now they do have a trusted adult. Is that enough? Probably not, but we're going to continue to push that number and continue to expand our mentor program and figure out how do we connect with all kids. And then obviously the engagement piece on the next slide is the one that's our growth. There's many different factors we need to look at on how we engage our kids and our curriculum and instruction, and how do we give them, that voice and choice a little bit, so to speak, and relate things to real world. This is a hard one, I think, for us to swallow a little bit. And when we walk into a classroom during CKLA, or we're not even in a classroom at recess, other kids are talking about this stuff. That's the first step in how we start to engage kids. I've never in my career, I've heard so much conversations around what they're reading and what they're learning in CKLA. I'm excited to see where that goes forward as our teachers get more comfortable in that instruction, and just we're expanding some networking and getting other teachers in classrooms to network on great strategies to engage our kids. I do see that number going up.
I'm also curious about that question and how if people understand or students understand really what that means when they're.
Oh, it's already going to be
right.
Class, right?
Yeah.
I see you're talking about 3rd and 4th and 5th graders. It changes a little bit, but that's also, that's an opportunity to growth, and for us as a team to figure out what is that, thing that we can do to help increase that. Is it those connections right away in the morning? Are we looking at, morning slides and circles and what we can maybe do better in those spaces? We kicked a lot of that off this year, and we just have some adjustments to make in that space. So,
questions about
any questions on behaviors, attendance, or surveys?
Do you think with another PE option for students next year, in addition to what they have already, will have any effect on what you're seeing right now in terms of behavior and other places?
Yeah, I think the more movement we get, the better. Obviously, we have to continue to coach our transitions and different things like that. But what we're talking about, we were talking about that today, is how do you go get that movement and then get back, get laser focused, right? We need 45 minutes to an hour of just, we need to hit it, and it's going to be all on board, and we're going to get through these lessons and, assessments or other, and then, hey, how do we get that movement again? So I know we're talking about how do we continue to get kids to move, and looking at the master schedule to manipulate that a little bit, to have maybe another PE session or, more movement. We do have that one recess. I think that's going to win. I know when we took it away a little bit, there was some conversation around that, but just general behaviors and us being able to coach in the moment and do certain things has been a lot more structured, and we've had a lot better, I think, results within the classroom because of that. And I do think PE and another section of that may definitely help. I don't see it ever hurting, especially in the elementary level. We have about 8 to 9 minutes of really good attention, and then we get a little wiggly.
All right, moving on.
All right. So here's just a table of some different data. Like we've said, in all of the presentations, this has been year 1 of Ames Web data. So I really wanted to kind of also take a look back at what did our STAR data also show. So in comparison to, 22, 23, 23, 24, how were our kids scoring in terms of like the percent of kids who are at or above that 50th percentile? So on the far right, you can see we had some nice pockets of growth, specifically kindergarten and fourth grade. And then I would say first grade and third grade, we definitely did not see some of the results that we were hoping for. It's hard to identify for sure, like why those things, or why the data, I guess, is reflecting that, because when I think about all of the efforts and things that we've done within that Act 20 space, K through 3 are really those grades that we've been targeting the most. Down below, you'll also see just in general, like the percent of students, so just like that average. So we are trending up in the area of literacy when you look back on the last 3 years. But then the other really important thing to note, I think, is just our overall total enrollment. When you look at first through fifth grade, just seeing how we've continued to grow with our number of students like each year. Special education at the elementary level has increased quite significantly. We have had a lot of new students. So you'll see in a slide or two, you can go to the next slide. I'll come back a little bit to the special education piece as well, but this is just a visual that also shows, if you look on the far right, ELA growth. So one thing that's been really neat about NextPath is they not only break down like the percent of students who are at the 50th percentile and above, but they will also break down how kids are doing in terms of their growth. So in 2 slides, you'll see a chart that indicates how many kids had what they would consider typical or aggressive growth. So that has been, I think, the reassuring thing as we've kind of looked at our numbers and really kind of factored in all things that we've tried to tackle this year with Act 20. But as you can see on the right, in terms of the percent of kids who had that typical or aggressive growth throughout the school year, our numbers look pretty good in that space. But definitely some work to do overall, like within achievement, within ELA and literacy.
So, can you
Yep.
go back?
Yeah. Where's my backspace in here?
Can you arrow back on the keyboard?
Thank you.
There you go.
Wow. Do we catch that publicly? Thank you. Please put that in my evaluation in a couple days. Thank you. Oh my goodness.
I just trying to make sense of like
Yeah.
in the kindergarten where it went from fall 25 to 22%, but then it says 68% of the kids experience normal growth. That doesn't seem like logical to me.
Yeah, so one thing, and I am not an Ames Web expert, but you'll see in 2 slides where that growth is. The cut score, each window gets increasingly more challenging. So like it gets harder for the kids to reach those certain percentiles. Possibly if you jump to the next 2 slides, that might, so you can see here, like the green and the blue show the typical and the aggressive growth. So even kids, if they were in the 5th percentile or if they were in the 80th percentile, they're still factored into growth, like the growth rate. Am I explaining that well?
Yeah, I got to think about it tomorrow. I understand what you're saying, but I'm still not there yet. But
Yeah, and NextPath is new too, so like we're learning as we go as well, but there's been different charts that we've been able to look at, and from my understanding, this is measuring their overall growth rate, so how they're doing with growth.
So the 22% could represent where they're at.
22% of kids, like with kindergarten, were at or above the
Okay.
50th percentile.
Got it.
see, what I struggle with is it went down, but it's saying most of the kids experienced. You would think if 68% of the kids experienced growth or aggressive growth,
Mhm.
that 25 would go up,
The
back down.
achievement, yep. I hear what you're saying.
Depending on that, wherever they put that
Yeah, where-
benchmark as a
Mhm.
calculation, if that goes up significantly, are they reordering so that they can hit that and it's only, I mean, there's still probably growth, but it looks
They still
like they didn't do
50,
anything,
right?
basically, yeah, right.
The other interesting piece with all of this too, and it kind of, I'm jumping ahead a little bit. Ames Web just came out recently, and this is all connected to DPI. They are going to redo what they call their norms. So when Ames Web was originally kind of up for renorming the assessment, it was in the middle of the pandemic. So we've all been told that right now, these percentile ranks, because when you're looking at percentile, you're always going to have a group of kids fall in that 25th percentile when you're looking at that specific measure. So when they go to redo the norms, they're telling us that it's going to be a more accurate assessment because we're going to be comparing kids now to kids today. Right now, we're comparing kids to kids over 10 years ago.
But we're not gonna use this, right?
Well, we
We still have to use the diagnostic from K to 3, correct?
The screener.
The screener, excuse me, from K to 3. But in those other areas, when we look at 4, 5 through 12 with special ed, we'll be using iReady. So we still have to do as that screener as a state through Act 20, we have to still go through Ames Web. That tool or Ames Web has not shown significant good stats in terms of like just knowledge, I mean, basically understandable, and it just, there's a lot of like deficiencies within it. So we are looking at iReady because it's more proven and it's been around for a while, that we can keep that consistency with that and honestly help our teachers a lot more with that as well.
Yeah, I would say it's been a pretty heavily criticized tool by the state. I know they're continuing, like, it will be used again next year for the screener. But like what Dr. Mina was sharing, we'll be moving to iReady for more of the diagnostic. And that's a piece that's also a part of Act 20 that we are required to do. And really what that's saying is the screener's gonna flag us. They're gonna say, hey, these are the kids that you need to pay attention to. The diagnostic is going to tell us this is what you need to do with this kid because they're falling short in phonemic awareness. And they need that before they can move on to decoding. Here's another visual, again, Ames Web, so like take it for what it's worth, but you can see, for example, with kindergarten. And I think these are powerful visuals because it does also show that we are moving kids across the tiers. So the far triangle on the left for kindergarten shows how many kids would be considered in the green, so low risk, and then I believe that it's moderate risk and high risk. So even seeing from fall to spring, how that green has increased, like within that grade level, and then 5th grade too, like looking at how much green we're seeing within that too. So just another way to kind of view the data. Another piece with Ames Web that isn't, I would say is heavily criticized is they take kids who are in the 25th percentile to the 74th percentile, and they consider them average. So that average range is very, very big. So like you're very different abilities within that range. That's the growth slide that just breaks it up. I think we kind of already covered that. Math data, you can see here, those are the same numbers from Ames Web with the numeracy and then the math composite scores. We do not have our forward data yet. That was the SLO goal that we had last year that we focused on, and really just looking at decreasing the number of students who fall in that below basic. So I believe we will have results for sure with literacy next week.
May 27th.
Possibly with math. So I'm excited to see what those numbers shape out to be as well.
But they changed
They did, yes.
So is it gonna be a valid comparison anymore going back?
They've said a couple different things about that.
They haven't made the shift yet. They've talked about, so they're still on what they had last year. And then we'll see what happens in the coming years because they haven't made that cross back, but that, again, this is what makes it so difficult in education with all these different targets and not really the consistency of keeping one and the benchmarks the same. At the same time, I think we as a district are choosing something that's gonna help us at least keep some more consistency in one tool that will share the story a little bit better than what it has.
Because I don't know, it's probably a discussion for a different time, but on that forward exam, we've been shifting those things.
Yeah.
I mean, I think the only real accurate measurement out of that is where you rank statewide, right? So
Yes, because you're comparing apples to apples. Yeah.
apples. So I would like us to look at comparing our state rankings. And I don't know, I just see the public data, so I'm sure you guys get more detailed data than I get online. I don't know how much that is possible with the data you get, but I'd like to see us start looking at where we rank in the state, because I think that's the only value.
And I can show you that next time, and just in terms of like past as well, because they show where North Fond du Lac is with everybody else in the state, and in like reading, in math, in those areas. And then we're pretty much on a graph, and we're one of the dots on the many different plots that are there, but it gives you a good representation and then shows you like where we have been, where we are as well.
Okay.
So I've got that for you as well.
You can go to the next slide. This is just another visual. Again, I picked two different grade levels. K1, we did not do the math assessment on Amesbuck just because we really felt like we were over assessing our students. A lot of their assessments, K1, are one-on-one, and so we just really felt like we were getting a lot of great information from our tier 1 tool Bridges, and the teachers are doing a lot of assessments within that space. So here's a snapshot of, again, 2nd and 4th grade, just looking at that growth over time and overall the amount of kids that are falling in the green. Same thing with math. Again, growth numbers overall, a lot of kids are being considered to have aggressive growth or typical growth within the math area. Next steps. So all things kind of Act 20, I think, fall within this umbrella, but steps 1 and 2 from my original CSIP really focused on professional learning in structured literacy. Last year we were balanced literacy. This year we're moving to structured literacy. Like Brad had also mentioned, I think our engagement numbers are definitely being impacted a little bit by this because it is just that much more direct instruction. So I know one takeaway that I had from just the meeting tonight is connecting with Tiffany and really finding out like what are some of those things that maybe are happening within those classrooms at Treffort Way in terms of like how we're engaging our kids with the curriculum. I know our teachers as well, like a lot of them still have to have that manual on their lap, like they're really trying to do it to fidelity, which is awesome. But I think we lose a little bit of the art and craft of teaching when we're trying to be so scripted. And that's not a fault to any of them. They are working super hard and it's
And one of CARE's responsibilities as that literacy coordinator is to assist with that, like be it taking strategies from Treffort or best research practices and like, okay, yes, you're teaching a tool, but you also have to teach so that the learning's happening too. And it's not just going from one ear from the other. And so that's a really important part of her position as well, of getting to the teachers, coaching them up, showing them beyond the textbook what they can be doing to engage the students.
Yeah, and that's kind of indicated there too as well. So we've started our online course modules. So that's the required teacher training that all of our teachers K through 3 have to participate in. As a building, we're doing that K5 because it's best instructional practices. So we had our first PD day back in April. So that's how our staff spent that April PD day on that Friday. And then as you can see ahead, we have 3 of those PD days slotted next year to work with our coach from CESA 6 alongside Kara, who will complement that, really well, and just continue to, I think, build the capacity with all of our teachers on how to best teach literacy. CKLA implementation all kind of falls into that same bucket, continuing the work that we're doing during collaborative team times. And yeah, just partnering with Kara to really look at our tier 1 instruction. Step 3 continued is administering Ames Web Screener year 2, so just the screener component, which means some of the other tests that we were doing within Ames Web will fall off because iReady will pick up those different subtests within that diagnostic. I think the big thing that we learned this year, it was a lot of compliance, like let's do this and let's try to do it well. And now it's really shifting to like, how can we commit and continue to learn and grow and build off of what we know. Like now that we know that we have the structure in place to make this happen, it's really about making sure we're matching kids with the right interventions and not just saying, okay, you 5 qualify for a plan, let's do this with, and just being more strategic and intentional with that piece. Finally, just some PRP data that I also wanted to show with you and just kind of where we're at within that phase. We really need to think about how we can best communicate this with our families. We originally pushed out PRPs in EduClimber. It was a little bit of a nightmare. There was a lot of glitches. We moved to NextPath. It's been a wonderful, wonderful thing, so much easier. I'm sure Katie can speak to that too, just in terms of how families receive those results. Yet we probably only had 30% of our families acknowledge the plan. So really trying to think about next year, like how do we leverage conferences? How do we leverage parent meetings to make sure that they really are partnering with us in this work? Because that's a huge part of the Act 20 initiative overall. We're piloting Jumpstart this summer, so that kind of ties into the promotion policy that I know we might talk about a little bit later, but we want to just kind of see, like, once again, can we figure out the logistics of how we support the students who will eventually fall under that umbrella in the years to come.
Do you know how many students that would be and what that looks like for staff?
For Jumpstart?
Yeah.
We have, I think, 4 total teachers.
Yeah, we have 2 interventionists and then 2 teachers. So we're kind of going K1, will be 1 teacher, and then 2-3 would be another teacher. And then we have Amber Coates and Margaret Logeman will be pulling kids out to do just more intensive interventions within that time frame of 8 to noon. So.
And this is in August, right?
August, yeah, August 4th and then August 11th. So it's only about 8 days, but it's trying to kick off what, eventually this might look like. I just want to try to get a good feel of what that is, and then obviously starting that communication with the parents too, of looking for this on a yearly basis. So we have higher percentage of people responding and showing up for Jumpstart. So I think currently we have 12 or 13 kids right now. So, as we get to the end of the year, we'll push out again and look at another group of kids and try to get those kids here. So.
The final slide is just a breakdown of the personal reading plans. So you can see, just jumping down to the total, we had 208 students, K through 3, who qualified for a personal reading plan. Right now, we are sitting at 187 tentatively. You can see in the red, we have 9 potential exits in 3rd grade. Students cannot exit their PRP unless they are proficient on the forward exam, and because we don't know those results, we can't technically exit those kids. I also just wanted to break down the numbers. Kindergarten is a really good example of this. So we had 14 kids exit their plan, but as you can see, like if you just go 59 to 49, that's only 10. We had 4 new students move into our district in between those testing windows, and all 4 of those students qualified for a plan. So that's kind of what the table is just trying to break down a little bit in terms of like the new students. And then we also had a population of our students who have IEPs take the screener in the spring, and they did not take it in the winter. DPI kind of gave us the guidance that we should have all kids attempt, even though, like we've talked about, we're not sure that it's appropriate for all students, especially because we can't have all the accommodations, provided within that space for that assessment. So we saw some growth, but obviously want to continue to just keep making that number smaller and smaller. Questions? Oh yeah, 61% of 4K students are coming our way and they've already been flagged. So,
This is, again, not just a North Fond du Lac piece. This is every single district you go into. The percentages are high. People are trying to figure how they can work through this. So, I mean, and I think we've got the right plan together to, start attacking this. I think Lauren might come back in June to share a little bit more in depth on this information so you can get a better understanding of like where this all is and where it's going, because there's a lot of intricacies that fall into this to make sure that we're doing the right work here as well.
So if I'm understanding that right, 61% of the 4K students that took the Ames Web screener are going to enter kindergarten next year with a PRP.
so they don't actually have to have a PRP in 4K. But I put that number on there just so that like we kind of know what to expect
Okay.
when they come. But no, 4K kids do not have to have a PRP at that time. And then DPI really is still trying to figure out like the different rules and how kids exit. Right now, for example, there's a question out there where if a second grade student does not exit their plan at the end of second grade, but in the fall they score high, can they exit? Technically, they're saying no, because as a third grader, you have to wait until they're proficient on the forward exam. But if they change the norm, so there's a lot of change, happening all the time.
Matt, can you send that packet?
Yes, yeah, I'll do both of those too, because that was not, I mean, we had some information in there, but she wanted to go a little more detail of what was happening, so, yes, absolutely. All right. Any other questions for Lauren and their team? I do want to get in the first read quickly here of something that actually dovetails exactly with what we're talking about right here. And this is the promotion policy, and this goes along with Act 20, that we have to have something. And this is what you've got in front of you, and both Jacob and Katie, we read through this already together. You got to look at this as more of a bird's eye view kind of component, where it's the general idea of what the third grade promotion retention looks like for this, based upon the results we're getting back from these screeners, okay? So I guess the gist of it is like, how are we moving forward or keeping people back based upon what we have here? There is multiple different definitions, but the biggest thing I think, if you read any of this, is that there's a plan, there's a process. It's not just a willy-nilly like, okay, no, you're staying back. There's a team that you create, you put it together, you really analyze everything that you have to do before going either forward or backward with all this information. This policy talks about those specifics and the needs that are part of that movement, either forward or back as well. And so it talks about where we're currently at, what we need to do, and then it gets into promoting students with incomplete personal reading plans. And what does that look like? What does that, the PRP look like? How does that happen? But again, this is more broad scale. It's not as specific. Lauren's got a little bit more detail like in her area, which I think is good, because I don't think we want this so specific as well. We want to keep it a little more broad so that it leaves room for some gray, but allows us still to execute what we need to within helping students move forward or backward, depending on what the situation is. I don't know if you want to throw any more into this, Jacob. I mean, it's kind of like
what we talked about. This kind of meets the need of the district to have, a plan and policy in this area. But, like you had said, with Lauren's plan is gonna provide more detail on how we're gonna do that specifically. And this gives us the flexibility to do that, right?
Yeah.
I was happy to see that there are several different exit points where kids can move on.
Yes.
Because it talks a lot about, and reading through it, what's in the best interest of the child, and retention in my mind is not in the best interest of the child. There's so many other factors. I think that our legislature we're stuck a little bit back in the 50s and the 60s You know, you remember the word flunking and the stigma that was attached to that, and I think I recall that kids who get retained in kindergarten, first grade, have high dropout rates by the time they reach high school and stuff. So overall, for them and for society, I'm glad, and I'll leave it to you experts about how we're gonna work that out, but being able to use those exits to keep the kids moving on and still working, not forgetting.
Right. And that's the bigger thing too, is if you're moving forward, even they're below, we're gonna have plans and processes together to make sure that they find success and support moving forward. And that's the whole part of this too. In the original law, it was anyone who does not pass that must stay back in third grade. And people were like, oh, wow, okay. So our third grade numbers are gonna get very large over the course of how many years, doing that. And so then there was some look at this, and that's what I think the policy and the template from the state and the federal are starting to like combine and put this together from the Neola lens. What Lauren has is like the more specifics, like, okay, if we are moving forward, what does that look like for that child? Who decides that? And there's like players on that team, so it's not just one person making the decision or parent just saying, yep, we're gonna do this. There's a calculated conversation, discussion, agreement before moving anything forward. And that's basically what the gist of this goes into, and I'm not gonna go too far into it, but I don't know, Lauren, if you wanna comment any more from your lens, but.
No, I think you said it well. I am happy that there's obviously like the exceptions to the post-promotion. For example, our students who are limited English proficient and students with IEPs,
Yes.
which is also like, I didn't want to, draw attention necessarily to that within the numbers, but I think it's also important to look at that on that visual to see like of those 50 kids, for example, who have PRPs, how many of them are, do have an IEP or have an ILP, because those kids, when they get to this point, would have that good cause exception and it wouldn't necessarily apply to them as much as it would to some of the other kids.
Because they're already getting services for that assistance and support, knowing that's happening.
Yeah. And not to say we don't want to continue to do everything we can to move them, but I think it's important to factor that into the decision as well.
So this is the first read. We will bring this back again. This has to be approved by July 1, part of Act 20. We need to make sure that this policy is in our books in terms of the district. Okay? All right, the other policy and the first read was on the public comment, which we had some good conversations about, and I'm assuming most people have read through what we have currently in this. Obviously, we had an example of this evening, and let's see if I get this back down. We had talked as a board about the possibility of, again, the factor of just sitting here and like listening, and how does that, perceived, and how do we get more people part of the conversation? One of the things I just want everybody to note too is I wrote Neolo and just said like, is this a practice around? And are you seeing a lot of this? And they're like, no, we don't usually like the idea of speaking immediately after the conversation, but here's a couple different examples of how we've done it in some other areas to give the ability for response back to that individual. One of them being, we hear the information, and then within the next meeting's time or before or at the next meeting, we respond to that as a board, or the president responds to that either in writing and or like verbally within the next board meeting. That was just one example, but it was I think the apprehension from Neolo and other things is if we give, like John would have to answer right away, or someone else answers, and we might not really have a sole decision or understanding of like how we want to articulate this back. So that was like the question mark that Neola had for us. And I don't, Jacob and Katie, if you want to weigh in a little bit of where we were at with this, but.
When we had more dialogue around that, that was really what we had identified. It kind of puts a lot of pressure on John to answer with alignment
I don't mean to interrupt you, but there's no requirement that he has to answer.
Well,
He
he'd be
just
the,
listen to the person, depending on what they're talking about.
no, understood. We had said we were trying to, create the policy that would allow us to respond, not that we had to, right?
It sounded like what Neola was saying though, is that it would put John or the president on the spot to answer if we weren't prepared yet.
If we were gonna answer, the presiding officer, the way it was written, would have to be the person to start that answer, right? So-
I thought he could recognize anybody else though to speak up.
But then he's gonna have to do that on the spot and try to, how is he gonna know that you're gonna answer, you know what I mean? On behalf of everyone with aligned vision, right? Like,
If we haven't all spoken about it together, that's accomplished.
Right, but you can just speak from your point of view and you can say, this is my particular point of view. I don't want even John speaking for everybody. I mean, John can decide if he wants to give a response or not, and then we can ask to be recognized, but it doesn't mean we're saying that this is what everybody thinks. I mean, I understand the concern to a degree, but
Yeah, and I'm just stating that they didn't have any policy or template that they knew of that incorporated this kind of conversation. And so they were just laying out what they knew. And the thing that was closest to what we're talking about here was the idea of, the person has to have a written response if they want it responded to, in addition to the actual comment. And then that response would be then taken into consideration by the president and anyone else on the board. And we respond at another time, either via, correspondence and like email, or bringing it back to the board meeting the following time and responding back. So that was what they were sharing, because they hadn't seen anything like what I was talking about with anybody that they'd worked with so far, at least from the person I was emailing from Neola, who was our rep.
To me, that takes away the whole point of us talking about what we wanted to change. We wanted to allow somebody to be able to come here and say something and not walk out thinking, well, why not even bother coming here, because nobody even said a word. Mm-hmm. And I understand their concern of getting into, everybody yapping and going off on it, and creating problems that way. But I don't recall when we had that ability in our own policy before we went to Neola. It was really pretty minor. Somebody would ask a question and it could be answered. The president very often just referred to the superintendent and say, could you answer this? And superintendent answered the question. We didn't get into any big debates or, back and forth with the person, and, but we let them, it accomplished letting them know that, we're glad you came and told us about this, but.
And I'm not saying one way or another, I'm just telling you what I got as far as information, and just, I think that's the conversation here.
One of the things though that we did discuss was how can we accomplish that, perhaps not in the moment, but recognizing that with some formal structure. So meaning, next board meeting, we would have one of the pieces of report out to indicate that, we had a public comment the last time. Appreciate them coming. We did, address their concerns either privately, or perhaps you share a response more publicly at that point. That was one of the versions that we had talked about in our conversation and policy reading.
Well, yeah, and I guess another thing that often happened is the superintendent would say, it would be referred to superintendent, and the superintendent would say, well, I'll get back to you tomorrow. I gotta look something up, or I gotta check this out. And they would just call the person and, or.
Like, I will follow up with that person who's here tonight, right? Like, that's just my normal,
Right, it has to be that formal of.
Right.
Well,
And I'm
we were
not so
thinking
sure
in terms
anymore.
of like visibility, right? Making sure that we're being transparent.
Well, transparent, but also that we're willing to listen to them. I think that, to me, that was the main point, that, we don't just sit here and stare at them and then go on to the next business item, like, do they feel, well, why did I even bother coming if nobody even said a word in response? But if it's something just cursory about the president answering it, if it's more of a question, it can be answered, or it could be referred to the superintendent to answer it right there, or the superintendent can say, can I get your number? I'll call you back tomorrow, or, or something with more detail, or I'll look into that and then get back to you. That was about all that ever really happened 90% of the time, I would say, when people spoke, so. And it wasn't all that often, we've had maybe 1 or 2 meetings in the last year that I remember somebody even.
2 meetings in the last 3 years. I mean, I would say that we've had people actually have comment.
And I was just gonna say too, I'm not knocking the old, but I don't necessarily agree that no other districts have a policy where they do be able to speak and answer to.
I guess you could put a question into chat GPT and ask policy every time we leave today. But I mean, is it much different than when we get an email that's addressed to everybody on the board? I mean, I answered the last one, but I made it clear it was my opinion. Do we need to have emails covered by a policy that says we can't answer them?
I mean, our pattern has been, this is what we, if there's something that we haven't addressed before, that would come to me so I could respond back before you all have to do anything within that frame, has been in the past, but.
With this one, we don't have to do the first reading tonight, right?
No.
We want to get it in place.
Yeah, this is not something we have to have done by July 1st, but the sooner we get some more structure, the easier it is for when that happens, that we are good to go.
I would like us to continue down the path of looking at the option to respond.
Yeah, well, and if that's, okay, can I, the email I sent you
Sure,
today, which
yeah.
I should have done a month ago, and I apologize again for that, but these are items that I changed or added in this policy, Neola's policy, that more mimics what we had in the past when we had our own policy manual. We didn't have a service, so there's like 4 items. And if you want to look it over and see, and then talk about it again at the next meeting,
That'd be great.
I don't know.
Again, we can get
I
this,
made copies for.
I guess I get the urgency is like, how fast do you want to throw through? Because that's versus take some time to look at it, but I got it already on.
Again, it's just to kind of give you some history about what we did in the past. And it was more, that's the other thing too, we did have people that would ask to speak to one of our agenda items, not just during the citizen comment, so, and I think what Neola put together focused more on just that.
Yep.
Congratulations.
For what it's worth. I thought there were some things missing too, like we didn't have a line in there about, the second from the bottom, personal comments about specific staff members, because we sometimes have a parent come here and they want to rip on the.
Right, and that can't happen. That's part of it.
So, yeah, that just puts it in there.
Even timing too. I don't know, did they have the time on there? Was it 15 minutes or was it limited to? Or 5, or what was the?
They had 15 minutes
Yeah,
total.
Total, and then wasn't it 3?
3 per person?
5 it said.
Okay.
Per person, but I think we only had 2 in the past, or 3 or
Sure.
something. And then, and you have the discretion not to stop them if they're trying to finish their comment, but.
I think, thanks for putting this together first. I think we just look at this, review, and then, because I'm in agreement, like with, if we're gonna make a change, the purpose of it was for people to feel heard and giving us an opportunity to respond. live, right? That was our goal. So, I mean, I think let's take a look at this and bring it back maybe whenever our next meeting is to do a first read.
I mean, I understand what we talked about, the purpose for it. I just think there are a lot of variables perhaps, maybe I'm overthinking it to your point, like there's not as much that it's, they're pretty small items or whatever, but someone's gonna have to filter that, right? Like quickly, on the spot, and say, does this need to be responded to? Is it, how should we respond? And what, who should respond, right?
Yeah.
Because I guess that's the other question, is it individual's point of view or is it the board's response? You know what I'm saying? Because if Rick's statement, like you said, like, this is my point of view, but is the public comment a response from the whole board, or is it just from multiple individuals?
I mean, this is a board meeting, it should be on behalf of the board.
Yeah, that's true.
On behalf of the board, if we've had discussion and agreement on that. If we haven't, then I think the easiest thing to say is, that's a topic we have to take up as a board. and make a
Sure.
decision.
Yeah, sure.
That's what I'm
That's
thinking.
fair.
A lot
Yeah,
of the
I'm agreeing with
responses,
that.
it's probably gonna be
Yep.
either to you if it's something
Yeah.
specific, and you may say that.
I have to look,
I
yeah.
have to look into it.
Yes,
And for us, it
exactly.
would be, this is a topic, thank you for your feedback, this is a topic we're gonna take into discussion as a board, right?
Or if we already have, we can maybe.
Of course.
We could, yeah, and I mean, yes. But I think of the 5% of the time we have someone, 95% of it's probably gonna be that. Right, it's either gonna be, need to discuss more or go to you, because it's something based on the operation.
Absolutely.
Right.
Just add to it, just using tonight's example, what I would have envisioned saying is that either Matt or if Matt
Right.
wanted to refer to Jillian, what she said in her later presentation was plenty for this meeting. When she said, that to the effect that we'll work on that, or, just something short and sweet like that for this meeting, but then they can always get together on their own. Like, she should have probably went to Jillian first, I would think, about the issue. That's been said before. I know Aaron said that, well, have you talked to the teacher or the principal?
Yeah, it's like a
Right.
statement of acknowledgement,
Yeah.
right? And follow up, right? Like, this is how we could follow up and stuff. So maybe when we were talking about is more about like formal answer, like how to address it. And so that might be where we were getting hung up. But I think, certainly crafting some ability for us to do a statement of acknowledgement or, follow-up pathway, I think is probably appropriate. If it's not a topic that we've talked about, then I think we should steer away from trying to give a.
Well, and another thing we could say is, well, that item is not an agenda item, the board can't discuss or make any decisions about that tonight, but, just kind of general answers.
Right.
In some cases, they may take it as a blow-off answer, but at least we're able to say something to them.
I haven't read this yet, Steve, but you were saying something before about letting them speak to an agenda item?
Yeah, that was always part of the policy also, and we can decide if we want to do that, but, stuff we talk about now may be different than it was 15 years ago too, that maybe a little more, fact-based stuff where they might have an opinion.
Would they do that during citizens comment section, or they can do it
the
during?
actual agenda item.
Yeah.
Most of ours is stuff now, is stuff that we've talked about in closed session and we're just coming out and approving it, so there's really, we could limit that, or that might.
Well, I just think if it's during it, their comment might get lost in the discussion, right? So like, I think even from like an end user, if I'm a community member and want to speak on an agenda item, I get its timing, but if they would speak on what we just went over for an hour and a half, it might get lost in all that information, right? Where if it's in the citizens comment section and we are able to give them that feedback of, thank you for sharing, this is something that we'll definitely look into. I think, to me, if I was in that position, that's what I would want. Yes, I'd want answers, but if there's not answers, I would want the due diligence put into it to find the answer that's correct and then closing the loop with them after. Whether that's Matt or myself or any of us, whatever that looks like.
Are we still on there, Matt, or is that the same?
So we gotta jump on because Maria's still waiting for us, for that last piece on the budget component, so.
Okay.
So what I'm hearing is review this, we'll discuss further next time around, is that what I'm hearing? Or do we wanna put more things together so it's a little more solidified the next time around that we can have a conversation?
Personally, I'd like to see it to where we are reviewing like a first read next meeting. Like that Senator, I don't know if that's something if we have to have something before, or if the policy committee has, I don't know what that looks like, but because I just think it's important. Yes, summer will probably be quiet, but once school year comes, I think it's important we have a policy in place so that if there are things that are changes and community members want to share about that, we're able to default to wherever our policy is. Just
did we check with the policy people at WASB? Because they have those things where they have all different districts types of policies that we can copy or use pieces of.
So Jacob, Katie, maybe I can open up a doc and I can share with both of you and we can have the policy in there and you can iterate, make comments, whatever you want to do. And then we can get that going at least. So that before the next time, rather than having a full meeting for a while, we can just do it on our own online and start proposing particular language in those areas so that when we bring it back, they can have a little bit more of a solid, like you're proposing, John.
I think you're spot on with like the direction, and then you can always reach out, right? If there's questions, we can give feedback at some point if needed. I don't know how that works. You know what I mean? Like even if it's, so.
Right, if we don't start including everybody, we can give feedback individually.
That's what I mean, yeah.
So, sure.
Okay. I'm gonna bring her on. She's still awake.
She's probably taking a nap.
Maria, are you still with us, first off?
I am here.
Wow. Wait, applause, yes.
Little caffeine.
Little caffeine.
Yeah.
Do you want to walk through, we're at that point in the meeting that we are talking about that last measure in terms of the budget and looking at it. So I wonder if you could, share a little bit about what that is, and I can share the screen and then you can, start that conversation. I'm just going to get it to the spot where it needs to be though.
Sure.
And just give me a second here because I got to go back to my other one, which is crazy, but so it works. 1 second. Okay.
Took a picture of that hallway.
Did you do?
I did. I love that. It said that. Let me see. Sherman did that all pretty much.
Okay. I think I can do this now. I hope I can do this now. Are you seeing the doc?
I am seeing just the front of the board packet.
Okay. And I'm trying to move that doc and apparently it's not giving me the one that I want. How about if you could start walking through like what that letter is or what the proposal is, and then we'll work off of that, okay?
Sure. So the memo that I sent you just explains what the why behind the budget revision. It's not mandated by state statute. We do it though, or I started doing it when I first started because it then goes to DPI, and DPI has the best and most up-to-date budget, which they base our next year's equalization aid on. Our spending is in large part part of that equalization aid calculation. So I want to give them the most accurate and up-to-date information that we have. And that being said, there still is information coming, which I outlined on that memo at the bottom. We are still waiting for our high cost allocation. We won't know that until the middle of June. We still have 2 months of health and dental insurance claims that have to come through. And right now that's looking phenomenal. Those 2 months things. Our family savings plan, that usage, and our open enrollment final numbers also are coming. So there's still a lot of information to come, but this budget revision is based on the information we have today. So, are you hearing a lot of buzzing?
No,
Oh, okay.
no buzzing.
Yeah. Okay. Must be on my end. Okay, so, the other document, that is what gets published as soon as it's approved, and it's in Skyward, and then it gets uploaded to DPI. What we're looking at, so those last 2 columns, that's the 24-25 column, both of those. The second to last column is the original budget that you all passed in October, which projected a $633,000 loss, or deficit. And the last column is the updated, the revision column, the revised budget, and that is showing about a balanced budget right now. And that is largely due to insurance. We've talked about that throughout the year. It's looking great. Most of that is due to prescription usage and the tools that we've been given, or that we were, that USI helped us secure. So that is working. It's definitely working. We've saved around $400,000 just in insurance claims.
Wow.
So that's one of the things. The other is we just had some staffing changes. Some positions weren't filled, which also definitely contributed to that whittling down that deficit. Those are the 2 main contributors. There are others. We had a decrease because of the closure of explorations. We're not using as much of those grant dollars, and that's affecting both the revenue and the expenditure side of the budget. We were allocated about over 500,000. We'll probably use around 300,000 of that, of those grant dollars. So you'll see a decrease because of that as well. So those are the 3 main contributors to a balanced budget. Any questions?
Maria, for those who may be watching this or that, I just want to make sure that everybody's clear that we're talking about the current year budget, not anything post-referendum decisions we've made for next year's budget, right?
Exactly. This is 24-25. This is still using that $800,000 in referendum dollars that we still had that 3rd year. Without that, we would have seen a deficit.
And that falls off after this year, right?
That falls
So
off
everybody
after
knows
this
that $800,000 gone.
Yes. Yep, so really good news. That puts us in really good shape for the next couple of years. for sure. It would mean that if we end with a balanced budget, we would be at almost a 19% fund balance at the end of the year. So that's really, really, really positive news.
And of course, then all the positions that we had to alleviate or changes we had to, that will only be affected in that next year's budget, correct?
Correct.
That's what's gonna help offset.
That's what will help offset the $800,000 as well,
Yes.
correct?
Yes, we made enough cuts that we should be balanced next year as well.
The cuts we made, all right, in terms of staffing, it will offset that $800,000 that falls off this year. We'll have, it'll offset it a little bit closer, and then depending on healthcare and all those other things that fall into it, will get us into a spot where we could be close to balance as well again, is what she's saying, correct?
Yeah, right. Yeah, right now, I've done a really, it's a really raw budget for next year, and right now we're looking at a deficit of under 100,000. So, if insurance keeps trending the way it is, it could be better than that. So, again, we don't know what the state is gonna do. We won't know that until this summer. So that could also, really help us. But right now, with just the changes that we made, with all of those staffing changes that we made, it is looking like less than $100,000 deficit for next year.
Which was the reality of what had to happen, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
Any other questions for Maria? Will you, when I drive by this evening, will you have a beverage for me? In terms of hot cocoa, so I can keep moving forward?
You might as well just stay there, Matt.
Yeah, no, I'm all good. It's graduation week. This is the fun time, so. Thank you for sticking on. Anybody else before she leaves? All right, thank you so much, Maria. Appreciate you.
You're welcome. Drive safe.
Thank you. Have a good one.
night, everyone.
Good night.
Have a good night.
Good night.
All right. Okay, that's my report.
Okay. All right, well, we have, next item is our new business. We have 3 items. The first one is to consider approval of new hires as discussed in closed section. So we had 8 total new hires, some of which were here, which was awesome. So thanks for getting that group here. To go through those, we have multilingual teachers, Jessica and Ellen. For FLC educators, we have 2, Ashley G and Ashley S. For our ADAP role, Matt, who we met here today. For the special ed, Director of Student Service, we have Brad Ranke, who is here as well today. For literacy coordinator, Kara. And then we have a social studies 6th grade teacher, Michael, who was here already and is going to continue with us. So I don't know.
Yeah, if I can give, just like, I think maybe the public's like, why are we, having all these positions that we're filling? Well, I'll just kind of run through this so everybody knows what's going down. First of all, the multilingual teachers, we had a resignation this year from one of our staff members. We also had an increase of students coming in terms of Spanish-speaking families, which then allows us to do transferable funding so that it doesn't cost us anymore. It's just part of what we get to do within that frame. And then looking at the FLC elementary positions, the 2, one of them is based off a resignation that happened earlier this past fall, and the other was based off a retirement that we had. The lit coordinator, as I stated before, was the, basically getting rid of the math coach position or eliminating the math coaching position and then bringing that in as lieu of, so not adding anything but replacing. The AD and AP was the reorganization of the director of K-12 activities, with that going into the 6-12 to keep things float at that level. The director of student services was based upon a retirement in that area as well. And then the social studies position was based upon a resignation that happened past fall as well.
Excellent. And then we do have some other positions based on some of these promotions internally that are opened as well.
Correct.
Okay. Awesome. All right, so I will look for approval to consider the new hires that I was just laid out in the previous discussion. I'll make,
So moved.
I can second.
For discussion, for the actual minutes, if we could put the full names in, I think it was fine indicating who they were, but they should always be in there.
Yeah, I wrote it down in here.
Good.
Okay.
All right, Matthew, yes. Hawk,
Yes.
Geckerman,
Yes.
Hempner,
Yes.
Gillings.
Yes.
Right, next item is consider approval of summer school contracts, which were shared with us. So look for a motion for those 4 contracts.
So moved.
And I'll second. Then whenever you're ready, Rick.
Geckerman,
Humphrey first.
Hunter,
Yes.
Geckerman,
Yes.
Hawk,
Yes.
Gillings,
Yes.
Matthew, yes.
Okay. And then our last item is a consider approval of budget revisions that Maria just shared with us. So look for a
I'll make the
motion.
motion.
Okay.
Second?
Hang on a second here. All right, who made the motion?
I did.
Steve.
Flip pages here. You seconded?
Yes.
Hawk,
Yes.
Hempner,
Yes.
Geckerman,
Yes.
Gillings,
Yes.
Matthew, yes.
Excellent. All right. And then our last item is adjournment. So we're adjourning today at 10:28 PM. So thank you, everyone.
All right.
Good night, late watchers and people who are watching back. Be well.
I was gonna add there that